Thank you, Wilson Pickett. So, as we continue to honor amazing women of history, this is Sally Ride. How appropriate, right? Sally Ride was the first American woman in space. That might be Anthony.
Can you hear
Success.
me
I
now?
can hear you now. That is the strangest thing. Good evening.
Good
Welcome.
evening, sir. Thank you.
As I was saying, pictured behind me, Sally Ride, the first American woman in space. She made her journey into history on June 18th, 1983. Throughout her life, Dr. Ride broke barriers and worked to ensure that girls and women were encouraged to do the same. In 1977, Ride answered a newspaper ad placed by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, realizing that technological and scientific skills were as important to the future of the space program as good pilots. NASA began a search for young scientists to serve as, quote, mission specialists on future space flights. Ride was only one of only 5 women selected for NASA's class of 78. Her natural athletic ability was an incredible asset as she trained with NASA in 1977. Parachute jumping and water survival training accompanied her technical and scientific instruction. Ride was one of the 5 crew members aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger STS-7 on June 18th, 1983. She became the first American woman in space and the youngest American in space at the time. The mission took 1 week to complete. Before her launch, Dr. Ride was interviewed several times about her preparation for going into space. Among the questions about her training, she was also asked questions about how space was going to affect her ability to reproduce and what kind of makeup she was going to take on the mission. She handled the question with grace and later said, "It's too bad this is such a big deal. It's too bad our society isn't further along." Sally Ride, another badass. Um, Good evening, sir. How are you?
Life
Everything
is
good in your
good.
world?
Yeah,
And
man.
speaking of badass, I thought this was appropriate for the evening as we
Ah,
dive into lots of
yes.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot to cover, obviously. So everybody, before we get into it, let's do the usual. Please like and share the live. We would really appreciate that. There's a gifting goal this evening. We're working towards 65 subscribers. Thank you to everybody. If you want to continue to support the channel, you can do so. There's a link in my bio on the link tree, and there's an option to support Anthony there. There's some pay apps for me. There's a couple of links that will take you to some petitions we're working on gathering information on. There's also a link to the YouTube channel. If we can get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, we might use that platform in preparation for whatever's going to happen with TikTok. But there's some advantages of having TikTok. I'm sorry, YouTube as a live platform in general. Just gives you some more options. I don't have to deal with my phone for one. The desktop version or the laptop version, if you will, gives us more options. So those are all the things that we ask. Before we jump in, I think maybe we should just go to this because there's so much to cover. Anthony, what's top of your mind this evening, sir?
Well, elections have consequences.
Indeed, they do.
Congress is the most feckless and cowardly waste of oxygen. I'm trying to come up with something else.
That works.
Most inefficient body in the entire G20. It has had since 1952 to fix immigration,
Mm.
and it has not. It has had since 1954 to fix equality, and it has not. It has since the 70s to fix bodily autonomy, and it has not. Basically, the House of Representatives is good for one thing and one thing only, and that is naming post offices. Short of that, I have never seen a larger group of unqualified human beings to make decisions on behalf of we the people than the last 30, 40 years of Congress.
Mm.
And even more shameful is the American voter.
Yeah.
For all of you Bernie bros, for all of you, I'm going to sit out because my feelings are upset, for all of you who just discovered how shitty the world is and you don't want to vote, I want you to look behind Fax's head, and I want you to look at this headline, and I want you to understand that you are responsible for this. This is also on you. Now you're gonna come up here and be like, "You can't tell me to." Yeah, fuck you. I just did. This is on you. This is on Congress. To say that what happened today is beyond disappointing doesn't even match the anger I feel right now. We have a Supreme Court that basically can't make up its fucking mind what states' rights are or aren't, but it certainly can from a political standpoint. It certainly is making its politics be heard. Not about the law. It's about their fucking feelings on politics, and this shit's begun to piss me off. I am very fortunate that I could go live in a couple different countries, so I have that option. I know a lot of people don't. And by the way, America has never been great, will never be great, and is not the safest or the best place to live on this blue rock. So fuck you if you're going to come up here and say that too. Yeah, I'm a little fucking feisty today.
So, in case you don't know, what we're talking about is there was a Supreme Court decision today. Basically, and I asked Rolo to join us this evening if he has an opportunity to kind of unpack it a little bit for us.
Yeah.
Um, the specifics around this is that it's basically giving Texas the ability to enforce immigration law on their own terms. Oh, nice mic, by the way. We're twinning.
Yeah, I was trying to match. I'm trying to match your color. You have the dark blue.
I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't touch it. I'm afraid I'll break it. Um, so basically, giving Texas the ability to use state officials, state troopers, and the like to literally arrest people specifically related to immigration or what they deem as illegal immigration,
Yep.
which goes against the separation of federal and state powers. There's so many issues here, and I haven't had a chance to dive into all of it. I did ask Rolo, but I think what to your obvious anger and frustration, I think it's really dangerous because this is just going to create so much chaos, and so much
Yep.
violence, and we're going to see vigilante justice, and we're going to see all kinds of things. We're going to see deputization. We're going to see just a nightmare scenario, and it is absolutely ridiculous. I also asked, and we're going to spend some time on this tonight. There's a few other things that I think we also need to kind of cover off on. So I shot Dave a note, and he was kind enough, if he's still around. If you're there, Dave, I'm going to shoot you an invite. I asked him to kind of unpack a couple of other things for us because there's also a decision made that Aileen Cannon had made specifically around. Hey, good evening, sir. Hey, brother, you good?
I'm actually heading to my car, but I saw that decision that you had behind you. How you doing, Anthony?
Doing good, bro.
Um, and again, I haven't been paying attention to this one, so I'm not sure if it's a final decision or if it is. And I'm about to enter an elevator. If I lose you guys,
Yeah,
I'm not
part
sure
of
if
the
it's a final decision or
part of the
if it
stay, I
is.
think.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
they lifted the stay,
Yeah.
so we're still waiting on the final.
Yeah. I think it's fairly obvious to me where it's going to land, though. It seems like I don't know why they would lift the stay in that case. It seems strange that they would. Did we lose you? We did. Okay. Well,
I can hear you.
yeah. You can come back, Dave. I think we lost you in the elevator, but um, anyway, we'll spend some more time on that. And like I said, I'd asked Rolo to join because it does talk. Yeah, obviously it's a major change to immigration, and specifically the combination of our Supreme Court. The dissent came from the three liberal justices, and there was some sort of interesting language. And like I said, I haven't had a crazy busy day. I didn't get a chance
Yeah.
to dive into it, but I know you might have, Anthony. So is there anything that
Yep.
stuck out to you specifically that really kind of grinds your gears, aside from
Well,
the obvious? And please tap, 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 and like and share, guys. Thank you very much.
here's what I don't understand. Right? Every time a lawyer comes up, they speak in legalese about precedent and about tradition and blah 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 blah. Throw up in your mouth, blah blah. This Supreme Court literally knew that the Fifth Circuit was taking this up. They didn't release a full brief yet, and I'm sure that will come out in a couple of days. And I'm sure their reasoning behind this was completely political bullshit and had nothing to do with legalities, which is why they didn't release it. What's going to be really interesting here is the comment that they made. Oh, well, after the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has formally acted on a stay of application, um, both parties can come back to the Supreme Court. Well, just fucking wait. Like, why does this case in particular? Why do you have to go ahead and allow Texas to do something that clearly is not a states' rights issue? It clearly falls into federal purview. Yeah. It goes against the INA. I didn't see anything in the INA giving states these rights, so I don't know, right? Like, they keep trying to skirt politics into their role as the judiciary, and then coming up with these weird explanations and justifications for why they take actions, right? I'd be very curious when the actual logic is released, who signed it, who said what, right? Because clearly this goes against any precedent that's been set, but clearly that word no longer holds sway with this court, right?
Yeah.
So in short, we're basically waiting on the Fifth Circuit to make its ruling, and depending on that ruling, it may go back to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court may have to do something else, right?
Yeah.
And,
they may not.
To your point
they may
earlier,
not decide. Yeah, they may not. We don't. To your point,
right.
We don't know. But it's just interesting that they've done this to this point when they didn't have to. Obviously.
Yeah, they could have literally just let it sit.
Correct.
And go let the stay, if you will, and go let the process in the Fifth Circuit, which they've done several times on many different issues, right? Sure. The conservative persons in the United States, singularly the conservative persons in the United States, so that includes anybody with an R after name, anybody that votes R, anybody who's MAGA, does not give a single fuck about life or humanity. They just simply don't. What they do care about is keeping the United States of America as white as possible. That's what this is about. This is clearly a line in the sand drawn around bigotry, racism, and ignorance, which is something the GOP is steeped in and excels at. And I can't find any other logic to this. I cannot find any other court cases that acted like this. The Supreme Court has never done anything except rule in the federal government's favor. And I point out, I think it was 2012 or 14, the Supreme Court told the state of Arizona to go fucking pound sand, and that you don't get to do this.
Was that Joe Arpaio, the sheriff? Was he involved in that? Was that part of that whole?
Listen, if there's something about racism or bigotry, Joe was involved. So
right, I might be combining them, but maybe he was involved in that. But I think it's around that same time, right?
I'm trying to find one article had.
While you're looking that up, why don't we just do a quick? I'm going to do a quick sort of housekeeping notes. So we would like to ask, and we'll get into our disclaimer in just a second. We would like to ask that people that are in the chat, please do not use all caps. The mods need that to communicate with themselves and to communicate with Anthony and I. We do not platform hate speech. We'll give you an opportunity. They will mute you at first warning. They'll ask you to come back and act like an adult, and then they'll mute you at the second warning. And then if you can't behave properly, they'll just boot you. So just be respectful. We want to create an environment where people can have good conversations. Anthony and I will match your energy. This is an opportunity for everyone to learn. I would just ask that we just act like grown-ups, and hate speech will not be tolerated at all. So if that's your game, then you might as well just tap out now and go back to your mac and cheese. Thank you.
Yeah, it was Arizona, decided June 25th, 2012. It was the Arizona Law SB 1070.
Okay.
In which supporters dubbed the Support Our Law Enforcement in Safe Neighborhoods Act.
Okay.
Yeah. So same bullshit, different state.
So we we talk about this every night, sadly, that everything we touch these days is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this. Everything is a
Yep.
test of our democratic institutions. Everything is a test of our systems, and we've seen it. And here's yet another one. Now, again, it's difficult to avoid being hyperbolic about things because of the impact downstream, right? So, what this basically boils down to, in my opinion, again, not to sound hyperbolic, is that the conservative tilted GOP has created a police state
Yeah.
in the state of Texas. And now we've already seen it. We've seen people cheering. I don't know why you would cheer that. It's not it violates every constitutional norm that our country
Yep.
has ever lived under. I mean, we all are, we're a nation of immigrants, and again, we've seen the vilification and the victimizing and the attacks on brown skinned people throughout history. And here's yet another example. So we will see what the Supreme Court does. We don't know. I think we can make some pretty, fact based opinions relative to what this is.
Yep.
But it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. We'll see.
It is. It is
Yeah.
indeed. One last rant.
Sure, go for it.
So I did a quick historical analysis of the term bloodbath and its use in modern language.
Hmm.
Um, First, modern language. The only recent examples, and by recent, I literally mean within the last 10 to 15 years, um, the term bloodbath was used in discussing the free fall that the stock market was having,
Hmm.
right?
Sure.
Every other inference or reference to the term bloodbath has always been used in terms of war or death or
Mhm.
deluge,
Mhm.
right? There is no correlation between auto manufacturing and bloodbath for it to mean that there would be some kind of economic fallout. I realize that the talking point went round and round, but there is no historical thread I can find, even tangentially, that I can pull where I could make that fit. So
Right.
we know that Trump specifically has this strange fascination with death and destruction, yet didn't have the cojones to fix his bone spurs and go to Vietnam. But
Mm.
he did manage to dodge the draft 4 times, right?
Mhm.
He's that guy that points at people to have them do his fighting for them.
Mhm.
It was a clear dog whistle. It was intentional, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Mhm.
Make no mistake, the guy's dumb as a stump when it comes to being intelligent or being learned from a book perspective,
Mhm.
but he's street smart. He knows what he's doing. He has this con and this grift down to an art form. It literally has never been seen before. And when he says that, he's actually talking about himself. He's always telling on himself. We've
Yep.
never seen anything like this before. That's absolutely correct. We've never had a criminal as a president. We've never had someone commit so many crimes or to be accused of committing so many crimes. We've never had a president that was taken to court by a state because he and his father were racist and bigots and refused to rent to people of color, right? So these are all very interesting things, and there will be more people defending him and blaming E.G. Carroll. There will be more people supporting him because, as we've pointed out, I don't even know how many. I've lost track of how many times there simply is no line these people won't be willing to cross to protect him, to be a part of him. And it's sad because, again, as I like to remind you all, you're not going to go to Mar-Lago. You're not going to get invited to his house. He's not going to sit and have dinner with you
Mhm.
because he laughs at all of you. And that
Mhm.
includes me.
Yep.
And that includes facts.
Correct.
He cannot stand any of us. His
Nope.
circle is incredibly tight. He may have 10 trusted people in his entire life, and that does not really include his children or his wife, wherever she may be.
I don't think he trusts them either.
No. Would you?
Frankly. Yeah. And so again, back to context, because I think it's important. So the quote was, quote, bloodbath, and that will be the least of their concerns. So yes, people want to make that connection to the fact that just before that, he was talking about the auto industry. And by the way, wants to put a 100% tariff on vehicles manufactured in Mexico. Who gets penalized, Anthony, when they add that 100% tariff on those cars that would eventually make their way into America?
That'd be the American car manufacturer
And the consumers. Exactly.
and the consumers. Yes.
Yeah. So again, doesn't care about you. So back to that comment. The part that I don't think has gotten enough coverage, and we touched on this last night, and that speech was just all off the hook, as they say. Quote: "If this election isn't won, I'm not sure if you'll ever have another election in this country. I will remind people that Vladimir Putin won re-election this week over the weekend in Russia, and Vladimir Putin's political rivals are either in jail, are either dissidents on the lam, or just simply pass away from sudden death syndrome. That is the model of people who claim to want free and fair elections, but actually don't. So I would like people to explain to us what the context is. If this election isn't won, I'm not sure if you'll ever have another election in this country. Ironically enough, if he wins, he's already told us that he would be a dictator for a day.
Yeah.
So there's that.
One whole day, he promises.
One whole day. So shifting gears a little bit, because there's all kinds of breaking news like all day and every day these days.
Yep.
So we had some movement yesterday in the documents case in Mar-a-Lago. Now, the criticism of Aileen Cannon has been that she's been dragging her feet. We know that she's been slapped down a couple of times by the circuit court down there for some strange rulings. This one probably takes the cake because basically, and I'm hoping that we can get some legal advice on this, and I've done my best to try to navigate my way through this. So I'm not an attorney. This is my understanding of what's happened here. So I'm throwing up the flag if anybody wants to come in and help me navigate this. But as it seems to me, she's basically jumped right to the end of the trial and has asked both sides to provide jury instructions.
Yeah.
And the way that she's laid out the jury instructions has to do with the Presidential Records Act. So the analogy that I heard is that the way in which she's explaining the Presidential Records Act component to the jury is akin to saying, all right, I would like you guys to have two hypotheticals, one for the earth is flat and one for the earth is square.
Yeah.
Neither of those obviously apply. So the jury instructions are supposed to be based on the law, but she clearly doesn't have the law right. So giving instructions to the jury when you don't have the law right, I don't know how you do that. I really don't know how. And it seems to be it's based a lot on the Presidential Records Act. So I thought it would be necessary for us to kind of talk about that a little bit. So I'm gonna pull up the language I think that's really specific in this case, because that's the part that I think is the most relevant. So the PRA, the Presidential Records Act of 1978, it's 44 USC B 2201 through 2209. Basically, it's lays out what the process is for classifying something as a presidential record, a personal record, who's the ownership, and the such. There's one particular piece I think that boils it right down. It says, establishes that presidential records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. Vice president too. Okay, it covers both of those offices. I'll read that again. Establishes that presidential records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. Along with the Presidential Records Act, there is a sort of a guidebook, and what it does is it lays out what the specifics are as to how they determine whether something is a presidential record or a personal record. So, personal records first. Personal records are defined as documentary materials or any reasonable segregable portion thereof of a purely private or non-public character which do not relate to or have an effect upon carrying out the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president, and which include diaries, journals, or other personal notes serving as the functional equivalent of a diary or journal, which are not prepared or utilized for or circulated or communicated in the course of transacting government business. Okay? Very clear. Presidential records are defined as documentary materials or any reasonable portion thereof created or received by the president's immediate staff, or a unit or individual of the executive office of the president whose function is to advise and assist the president in the course of conducting activities which relate to or have an effect upon the carrying out of the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. I don't know how it could be more clear than that. So,
Yep.
for example, when you are showing with the audio tape to support it, when you are showing war plans to people who don't have clearance, I don't know how that could ever be interpreted as a personal record. That's what the defense is arguing, and that is what Aileen Cannon is basically saying. Like, you can make the determination here, jury, what is a presidential record and what is a personal record, and then that would involve showing the jury classified information. So it's a win-win for the defense. I don't know how you can do that. I really don't know how. So I saw Rollo requested, so we can shift gears and go back and
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah.
I want to bring him up so we can talk about the ruling because I reached out to him today. So
Yep.
we're going to need lawyers all night long. I'm glad they don't bill us. That's all I can say. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I am good. Good, good. Just interrupting your very cool analysis, you know?
Well, maybe we can talk about that in a sec. um, thank you again. I reached out to Rollo as soon as I heard about the decision in Texas, and I don't know if you had any chance to kind of look at it. We tried to address it a little bit earlier. Hopefully, we didn't butcher it too badly. But your first take on what you saw and what you read.
Yeah, I was kind of catching up on it. You know, it's been a very busy day today. Had some preliminary hearings in the criminal side of my practice and getting home and getting a little bit acquainted with what happened today. But it is very alarming. Um, I mean, we have the Supreme Court on a technicality, basically allowing this law to start, you know, give it power to start being enforced in Texas. And the way I see it, it is going to be very detrimental, and there's going to be a lot of irreparable harm to a lot of people, right? Because it's very broad. I mean, what is it that they're asking? They're basically saying that Texas um, can arrest migrants, asylum seekers, people coming in who are suspected of illegal entry,
Right.
right? So my point is, how the heck do you suspect someone of entering illegally? I mean, unless you catch them in the act, I guess,
Right.
right? Unless you're seeing them at the border and then crossing, which is also a big problem, right? And I'll talk about why that's a huge problem.
Please.
Um, but once you're in, how are you suspected? How are you supposed to be suspected of entering illegally? And the only way that someone can have a reasonable suspicion or probable cause to enforce this is by listening to their accent, right? Whether they speak the language or not, or how they look. Those would be like the ways that you could have some kind of suspicion on whether someone is legally here or not.
Sounds like profiling to me.
That's exactly right. You know, unless you check their papers, right?
Right.
So then, how do you get it to the point where you can check someone's papers if you don't have some kind of reasonable suspicion to even stop them? And that would have to be articulated by what, right? When the police or law enforcement approach us and they ask for our documents, they have to have reasonable articulate suspicion that a crime has been committed or is about to be committed. Crime is afoot. That's what they call it, right, in the legal realm. So how do you do that when it comes to deciding, having reasonable suspicion if someone is here legally or not, or who has entered the the Texas U.S. border legally or not? So you have to rely heavily on racial profiling, and that to me is problematic. Right now, the other thing that could happen is, well, if I catch someone at the border crossing into the U.S., right, then there's really the suspicion of entering illegally through the Texas U.S. border. Then is really strong, right? Because I'm seeing you entering illegally. So then, what does that mean? Does that mean that Border Patrol, who gets to arrest them? Border Patrol to process them through the asylum process? Or is it going to be the sheriffs or the local police departments or whoever is there patrolling? Basically gives, in my understanding, authority for sheriffs and other police forces to step in and be uh, and do the role of border patrol and then arrest people on the grounds that they are suspected of entering the country illegally. Now, how is that going to conflict with the asylum process? If they're in criminal custody now, and then the judges are able to deport them, how are they going to deport them if under the Constitution, once you are in US soil, you have the right of due process? Because crossing the border does not disqualify you as a person. It doesn't take away your personhood, right? So under the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, it says that all persons in your soil have constitutional rights, including the rights of due process. So how is that going to work? Where are the conflicts? There's going to be a lot of chaos, and I think that's the main theme of like the dissent from the Supreme Court, which unsurprisingly it was 6-3,
3. Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
we know which 6 and which 3
Right.
dissented.
Right.
But how is that going to work? Who has jurisdiction, and how are they going to fight jurisdiction in this matter?
So
Will it take it away from the immigration judges if they are in criminal uh, custody from the state courts in Texas? Will that take away the jurisdiction from the EOIR to adjudicate these cases, or is there going to be a conflict? And how will the state courts decide who can stay and who can leave based on immigration laws and not on state laws? And anyone who knows, criminal law is completely different than immigration law, and there's no crossover. So unless the judges are also immigration judges, I just don't think they can decide on anything based on any of the knowledge that they have. There's a lot of problems to this. But you have some questions.
so yeah, I mean, obviously, so as we've discussed and as we've learned from you, and thank you again for joining. Please, everybody, tap the screen and share it live. We'd really appreciate that. We need this conversation has to happen. Misdemeanor when you cross into the border currently. We know that. So it seems like then that classification then would change. So if you can legally be arrested on the spot and then potentially deported on the spot, to your point, it circumvents the law, the federal law, to be able to seek asylum. Is that right?
Well, I mean, you have to find legal grounds, right? 8 USC
Exactly. So what are the legal grounds?
1325.
That's my point.
I don't know. 8
Right.
USC
No.
1325. It's
Yeah.
federal law. So who
Exactly.
can enforce federal law? Not state troopers or the sheriffs. It would have to be what?
Right.
The marshals, right? U.S. marshals maybe,
Would
or
have to be National
federal.
Guard, federalized National Guard, maybe. I mean,
Yeah. So
I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
what that
So
would look like.
can the state charge illegal entrant, right, with 8 USC 1325? I don't think so. It would have
Hmm.
to be the federal prosecutors. I guess they could arrest them on the grounds of maybe trespass, right? If they're trespassing, they've been doing that already. They
Sure.
grab him on trespass and then they put him in the criminal, and then they dismiss charges, and they're just trying to find a way to find legal grounds to arrest undocumented folk. But I just don't know how they would do that. So I
Right.
guess they would have to create a parallel immigration law that is at the state level in order to have jurisdiction over undocumented folk.
Well,
But
then there's
then,
precedent. Then there's precedent. Then every border state potentially could use the same model and apply the same law. So California, Arizona, others, right?
yeah,
So
others can do that. It doesn't even have to be like any state, right? At this point, it could
right,
be
any
Idaho,
state.
it could
That's
be
true.
Montana, it could be Utah,
That's
right?
true.
Anyone can like follow that president. The problem is that then you have the supremacy clause, right? Where federal law trumps state law.
Correct.
So then you have a conflict of law issue. So even if there is a parallel immigration law specific only to Texas, then you still have to have a huge conflict between the broad powers, plenary powers is what they called, given to the federal government, right, to decide who gets to come in and who doesn't get to come in. If you look at all of the INA and all of that, it talks about the president, or it talks about the attorney general, right? It talks about all these people who have the power to decide who is an asylum, who qualifies for an asylee, who qualifies as a refugee, who qualifies for all these things. But it's up to the attorney general or to the president to designate certain countries. So it's all federal.
Sure.
So I just don't understand, and I don't think it's clear how they are going to enforce Texas immigration law
Right.
without running afoul of the federal immigration law. Now,
Anthony,
if the Supreme Court rules against this is 100% chaos.
exactly. That's what we first. That's how we started this evening talking about it. It's just going to create chaos, and then we talk about the profiling element, and then it becomes this rounding up people because they can't speak English, and they might look like they've crossed illegally. I mean, I don't know where it ends. Anthony, did you have a question? I thought you saw you might wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, one of the things I'm secretly hoping for, and I know this will really piss off Republicans and the MAGA ites that are in the comments. My hope is that Abbott is tried in absentia in The Hague and can never leave the United States for violating human rights. And I hope that this happens soon, and I encourage them to do so because basically what he's done, right, is he's created a situation in which he's going to legalize the violation of basic human rights.
Yeah.
And listen, for those of you that don't know, Bibi Netanyahu can only go to a couple places on this globe freely without being arrested. This does
Correct.
happen. This can happen. And I don't believe in God, but I pray to the spaghetti monster that this happens because for me, the just desserts would be watching that guy get wheeled into the Hague and being convicted of this because, Republicans, you keep thinking that you have the upper hand, but you keep forgetting that we live in a global society. This
Right.
will impact trade. This will impact treaties. This will impact our standing in the G10, in the G20. This will impact our standing at the UN. Things are going to come home to roost, and you better get ready for it because, you go ahead and support this. It's a good thing none of you have a passport anyway
Mm.
because you're not going to be welcome anywhere else in the world. So
To
buckle up.
your back to your point, Rollo. Too, I think the challenge is, you're going to have you're going to have law enforcement officials in Texas, and they're not going to know what they're supposed to do. So you're going to have, and then we're going to find, as we've learned, we're going to find division in priorities. We're going to find some people will look at things from a human rights perspective, whether it be, see, I've listened to you, commerce, economic, family reunification, and humanitarian. See, I'll never forget that. Thank you, sir. Um, so, but people aren't going to prioritize those things. We know they don't prioritize it now, but, and I'm not going to say in some cases, I would feel bad for the people that are expected to enforce ambiguity, because that's what it comes down to. Like no one knows what's up and no one knows what's coming. So like, what do you do now? Because I can see the stories now. I mean, we've seen it, and I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, but we've seen enough evidence that when there's vagueness and there's ambiguity, people will interpret things as they see fit. And you will see backyard barbecues and law enforcement showing up and putting people in vans and driving them off. I mean, it sounds like fucking Russia, pardon my French, and other dictatorships. And it's just I don't know where this ends. It's almost like it seems like the Supreme Court is just like kicking the can down the road, and what happens next? I know we'll have to wait for the circuit decision, right? But how long is that going to take, and how many lives are going to be impacted in the meantime? Nope, we lost him. He didn't get clapped, did he? No, he should not have gotten clapped.
I mean, he didn't even say anything the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can. I don't know what happened, Roll, but please come back. Um, that's the concern. There he is.
It,
It's the
oh, there it
ambiguity.
is.
It's the vagueness and the
Yeah.
ambiguity.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know what happened. It just kicked me out. It says that the host kicked me out, but I don't know.
I did not. I
You
promise.
secretly kicked me out.
I did not. My hands are down. I'm over here.
Yeah. No, I mean, looking at this, it says divided Supreme Court clears way for Texas to arrest migrants suspected of illegal entry.
Right.
Great. So you arrest how many hundreds or thousands of people a day?
Right.
Yeah.
Then what?
Right.
Yeah. Where are you going to put him?
Where are you going to house them? I mean, this would probably be a good time to invest in like the private prison sector. This would be a really good time, because you're going to see those stocks going up because that's all it is right now. You
Yeah.
arrest them and you keep them there. You pay, I think it's like, I don't know, a couple $100 per night or $80 a night, depending on where you're at,
Mm.
right? Now you're just feeding the the private prison sector, and then what? What do you do? So you show up in court. You are charged now with illegal entry to the U.S. Now what? How the heck are the judges going to adjudicate these things? What are they going to
Yep.
say? Okay, you are here illegally. Now we're going to deport you. So then what? You just get put on a bus and then get sent back to Mexico. What if you're not from Mexico?
Right. That
Do
was
they
my next
have? Does
question.
Texas have the resources to send me back to Guatemala or someone to Argentina or someone to Peru? Are they going to do that? Or are they going to do what they did in 1954, right, with Operation Wetback, where you just grab brown looking people, whether they're here legally or not, and then bust them down to Mexico, drop them off at the border, and then they dehydrated to death, right? A lot of that happened. So there's
Does
a
this
lot of abuses.
does this create any sort of violations of international law since U.S. immigration law includes asylum? Does it so are like could Mexico, for example, say you're kicking people from Venezuela and Guatemala and other countries back to Mexico? I mean, you're violating our laws in reverse. I don't know if that makes sense. My question, but I could see all kinds of chaos from this
Yeah.
internationally. It's
I
just
mean, the US is part of the international conventions, right?
yep,
The International Convention Against Torture. If you don't adjudicate someone for that, the CAT convention, Convention Against Torture, you're violating international law. If you're just
right.
kicking them out without giving them due process and passing them through the courts to say whether someone qualifies for CAT, then you're violating that.
Mm.
How about like asylum? We're also part of asylum conventions. We participate in that. If the people are not given the due process, then now, what if you get a really liberal judge in Texas and say, hey, you came here illegally, you're seeking asylum, I grant you asylum.
On the spot,
Can they do that? Do
can
they
they?
bypass the whole? Well, I don't know, right? Because if
Exactly.
they can arrest and deport, why can't they turn around and say, hey, you can stay here indefinitely, you can be here, I grant you asylum? Is that part of the powers? Are they going to adjudicate asylum in these state courts? Does that
Interesting.
make sense? It's so stupid to me to just say, yeah, we're going to arrest all these people. And that's the extent of it. I mean, did they think further? Did they think past their noses, in this problem? Uh, I don't know. It should have been, well, you guys, I don't know when something like this happens, a lot of times they file for temporary injunctions, right? While it gets adjudicated. I think they filed one. I know, um, and that's what normally happens, right? If there's going to be irreparable harm, there are certain things that have to be analyzed if the TRO is going to be granted. Um, I don't even know if they did that here because all they're saying is that they skipped the appellate courts, right? And then they bumped it down to the appellate courts and say, hey, we're just going to go have you go through the process. But what happens in the interim? In the interim, they allow this things to go through. And I was trying to read whether there was a temporary restriction order or an injunctive order approved or adjudicated. I didn't have time to do that.
Would
But
that would that simply keep things in place?
what it does is if there's gonna if it yeah it keeps everything in the status quo,
Gotcha.
right? If they grant it, it keeps things in the status quo. So Texas would be injuncted from being able to apply their law until finality, until it reaches the Supreme Court and there's a decision,
Okay.
right? Because there, there's going to be irreparable harm to the people who are going to be affected by this law.
Yeah.
I forgot the actual elements, but there's three elements of why a TRO should be granted an injunctive relief should be granted. And I think that asking for injunctive relief for this to be stopped while it gets adjudicated, it would be granted by a regular court, right? Because you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be irreparably harmed in when this starts getting enforced, when this law goes into effect, and then there, how do you fix the problems that are going to happen,
Right.
and the probability of a reasonable law-abiding Supreme Court overturning the Texas law, I think are pretty high, even in a hyper-conservative Supreme Court. I hope,
Sure.
right, is my hope. We had this before. This was in something very similar happened in Arizona in 2012.
Anthony brought that
Something
up. Yeah.
almost identical,
Yeah.
almost identical. The Supreme Court, and it was a 5-3 decision, pretty much knocked down the whole thing when it came to the same things that they're trying to do now: suspicion of being here illegally, racially profiling. There's a lot of things that were overturned on that, right? So we've been here before, and if this um, court respects precedent, which I'm not very confident at this point,
Mm.
right? Um, Stare decisis, right? It's a principle of our laws here. If they were to respect that, which I don't know that they will, because of what we saw in Roe v. Wade, then they should rule the same way. This should be shut down if you follow the precedent that's already there. But it is so up in the air right now
Sure.
because I I haven't seen this happen before, where they're just kind of gang up on something and then overturn it, even if you have precedent upon precedent upon precedent, such as Roe v. Wade. So with this, even though there was something similar that went the other way, I I would like to think that the Supreme Court would rule that the plenary powers remain with the federal government, and that they're not going to throw this back to the states or do some kind of BS like that, or not back, but throw it to the states because it's never been a state issue. It's always
Right.
been federally
Right.
governed,
Right.
right? So I just don't know. It's to me, it's like very, very strange how they're acting, but they should have stopped it and wait until it adjudicated all the way, went through the appellate court and then to the Supreme Court, and they should have stopped it from taking effect. And
It seems like there's another layer that maybe this sort of just popped into my head about the rights of the citizens to seek legal action against an unlawful arrest or the not being granted due process, because the obvious targets, to me, it would seem like, I don't hate to use that word, but I think it's accurate in this case, would be people that are entering our country. But there's people that are here that might get caught up in that wave of targeting people with brown skin who don't necessarily speak English, that might be in the system already, that might be going through the asylum process, that, that, again, to your point earlier, how do you prove? What's the proof? What's the reason to arrest? What's the reason to round somebody up? So I would think that this Texas government that is susceptible to lawsuits, like one after the other, right? I mean, I don't know. It would seem like that violation of human rights, to Anthony's point earlier. And it's just, I think you're right. It doesn't seem like there was the next step, right? Like what happens next? Because it becomes a reactionary to rhetoric and to, whatever it is. But
We've
what do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we've already seen it happening.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if Anthony can pull it up, but there was I think it was either Texas or Florida where um, citizens were stopped and arrested and being citizens
Hmm.
in one of these laws that passed, and I can't remember if it was in Texas or in Florida.
Hmm.
But none of us are exempt. If you have somewhat of melanated or don't look, like a typical, I don't want to call American because, I don't know,
I
typical
gotcha.
Caucasian person, right? Um, then you are going to be a victim of this.
Right.
And unfortunately, I mean, you can see a lot of Hispanics in the comments, supporting these types of laws, unaware that that is going to affect them too,
Right.
either directly or someone that they know, or someone that they care about, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, it's already happening. So
Right.
yeah, I do see a lot of lawsuits uh, against the government, and we see that Abbott. I don't know if you read his letter uh, to Joe Biden and everything. He cites to Antonin Scalia, in the dissent, that he basically Scalia in his dissent said that the Constitution, that it was a myth that the Constitution gives the federal government exclusive power over immigration. So Antonin Scalia was fighting against this plenary powers of the federal government over the the immigration issues.
Right.
But I think it's a losing argument. I think historically it's always been up to the federal government to enforce
Sure.
this,
It's
and
an
that starts
international
with
border. It's an international border, you know?
exactly.
Um, what do you think? I mean, I don't want to keep you. You probably have other things you have to do, but like, what's next? I mean, obviously, it's got to work its way through the courts, but like, what's next? Are there emergency actions that can be taken because this is going to be affecting people's lives immediately?
Yeah, I mean, how do you fight the Texas government, right? When you have all
Right.
these forces.
Right.
Oh, Tony, do you want to say something?
The Florida law you were referencing is SB 1718. And that is where the civil lawsuits are going to and have been stacking up in Florida. So I anticipate that SB 4 in Texas will be akin to SB 1718 in Florida. Um, and one of the things that Republicans like to talk about is fiscal responsibility.
Mm.
Now, two things to keep in mind: Greg Abbott rejected all of the federal funding to help him with the border, right? So he doesn't have that money. And it was recently reported that all of the busing that he did, where they claimed they were raising money, there was a lawsuit and they had to take it down because it turns out they've raised like $5,000 so far to pay for all those busing stunts. So, hey, if you live in Texas, you may want to go ask your governor, where's this money going to come from? Because the only way to raise revenue is to
Tax.
give tax cuts to the rich. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. I was thinking like a Republican. Is that they're going to pass laws
Spicy, Anthony.
that will increase the amount of taxes on the middle and lower class to
Mm.
pay for this shortfall,
Right.
because there will be a shortfall. And Greg Abbott is literally maybe as intelligent as this napkin. Jury's still out on that. I have not been able to give the napkin and IQ test today, but I'm assuming it's somewhere around 120, where the AG in Texas may be hovering around 90 at best.
So, go
Yeah,
ahead, Ro.
sorry. I just want to expand on that.
Please.
Um, yeah, lots of lawsuits, civil lawsuits, civil liability,
Yep.
um, against the government, against the cities, against the people enforcing it, right?
Right.
If I go to Texas, I get profiled.
Right.
I don't have a way to prove my legal status right off the bat, right? I would have to like travel with my passport. I'd have to show my papers. And I would probably on purpose say, you know, you prove that I'm not,
Right.
undocumented,
Right.
right? That I'm here legally.
Right.
If they take custody over me, they don't have jurisdiction over U.S. citizens, right? The federal government, immigration authorities, don't have jurisdiction over U.S. citizens.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of problems. There's going to be a lot of, and some of them are probably going to be set up. It always happens that way.
I would think so.
But genuinely, there's going to be a lot of taxpayer money that has to be paid to illegals, right? So if people enjoy paying money or stipends or something to undocumented folk, then this is the best way to do it. Because when they win, and we see that these these civil suits, they win quite a bit. Uh, Anthony can fact check me on this, but there was some against the Trump administration when they were separating families, and there was a class action lawsuit, and they won, and they were granted, I think it was like 30,000
Wow.
per incident or something, um, because of the rights were completely violated.
Sure.
So that's going to happen again. And how do you defend against that? That's what I'm saying. They're so short sighted
Oh, right.
that
How does Texas defend it?
yeah, how
Exactly.
does
Yeah.
how
How
does
do you defend
Texas
it?
defend against federal law that people's civil liberties are violated under the 14th Amendment? They may be able to arrest them right now, but then comes all of the violations of under the law, under federal law. So I
It's a
just don't
mess.
know. I,
It's an
I don't know.
absolute mess.
It's horrible.
Well, is there anything else, man, that you wanted to? Again, I thank you. I can't thank you enough for jumping in last minute like that. I really, really appreciate it. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you would like to share on this, or any more comments in general?
Um. No, I'm just like again. I'm not surprised, but it's very disappointing the ruling.
Sure.
But I guess we'll have to see it play out, and hopefully people will be smart enough to. I mean, I don't know even know how to avoid being arrested, but if you know your rights, you need to exercise your rights. As an immigrant, legally or not, you need to know your rights. To right to remain silent, right to an attorney before you get answer any questions. The right against unreasonable searches and seizures, right? Don't consent to searches, don't consent to seizures, don't answer questions that are not necessary. Have an attorney number, ready for you. Have a plan, in case that you do get arrested and your family member gets in removal proceedings or held. I don't even know if they're going to be
Hmm.
bonds placed on people
Right.
because you have
Right.
the right to a bond, right? If
You
you get
do.
criminally charged, then what's the bond amount for an undocumented folk? They're probably going to say that it's a flight risk. So then are they going to give astronomically high bonds to, undocumented folk just for being undocumented, even though that's the only crime that allegedly they have committed? Or are they
Violating
going to
Eighth
deny
Amendment, maybe.
bonds?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So anyways, very difficult times, and it's unfortunate that the Supreme Court could not be bothered enough to protect people's rights.
Well, again, Rolo, let's stay in contact because I'm sure we're going to hear more about this. And I always learn so much from you, bro. And I appreciate you taking that. And I can see the concern on your face, and I think it's
Yeah,
palpable for the rest of us who care about human rights, brother. Thank you for joining
absolutely.
tonight, man. Really
Yeah,
appreciate you.
thanks for having me.
You got it, buddy.
Talk
See you
to you
later.
guys.
Be well.
Bye.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
he
the
was right. I'm trying to find the amount. This is a very complex case. But it was the first time in 103 years a case of this size and magnitude was won. So this case that settled, actually, the Biden administration had to settle it on behalf of the Trump administration.
Right. Is that in
Miss
Florida?
L v. Ice is the case, and so trying to, I'm all I can find is that it's settled. So I obviously it's the government, so trying to find the number I would have to dig, but yeah, I mean that was a huge lawsuit, and Trump administration got their ass spanked on that, and the Biden administration was left holding the bag because that's how presidential elections
And
happen,
what,
right?
right. And
One
what people
one
don't,
guy
I'm sorry,
does
go ahead,
wrong, and one guy comes and cleans it up.
cleans it
So
up. What I don't think people, and we're already seeing in the chat, is that people, when you're here, you're still entitled to the same rights under our laws. And that's kind of what that was the point that Rollo was trying to make.
yep,
Like, how do you address that? Your civil liberties. So I think cautionary tale, and I'm glad he brought that up. You have a right to remain silent under Miranda. You have a right to due process. You have a right to you have your civil rights. So I think it's really, really
yep,
good advice for anybody out there listening. If you have any doubts, please, please, please know exactly what your rights are.
yep.
Please make sure you have a plan. Make sure your family's aware. Make sure everybody has lawyer contact information or whatever that would look like, because it's serious. And it's disgusting and disturbing that we're talking about that. Another example that America is not the freest nation on earth, not even close.
Not even
Not even
close.
close.
Yeah,
And people cheering in the chat that people's human and civil rights are being violated is a reminder. Some of these people that could be targeted, Rolo, could be targeted
yep,
because he's melanated, right? I mean, again, that's what we're talking about. American citizens could be targeted in this.
yep.
And some people are going to be set up. It's obvious. And I think that there will be people that will be preyed upon, and it's disgusting that we're in this situation.
Yep.
So, but
Umberto, you're gonna
thank you
get
again.
muted.
Thank you again, Rolo, for jumping in, bro. Appreciate that. So, shifting gears a little bit, we'll go back to talking about this. We were talking earlier about the cases. There's the Supreme Court petition that the Trump team has written in regards to their response to the immunity oral arguments are coming up in April is comical at best. But
Yeah.
the quote that I think stood out to me is that this is a quote, the president cannot function and the presidency itself cannot retain its vital independence if the president faces criminal prosecution for official acts once they leave office. If the court rejects his claim, it would, quote, incapacitate every future president, leaving them open to blackmail and extortion, they added. Funny. It's never
Oh
happened
God.
before.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
had to deal with these issues before.
Yeah.
So
You
that's
know,
the argument.
it's almost as if you don't do the crime, you don't have to be weary of
Right. Quit
94
criming.
counts against you, right?
Exactly. Quit criming.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then back to the documents component, which I think is just comical. The analogy that I'm not sure if I got to it, but the analogy that it was described to me was that you're literally asking for you're talking about jury instructions before you've even set a
Yeah.
trial date.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's completely out of bounds. I should ask Raul that. He might not know the answer to that, but is that like completely out of the bounds? Is that appealable? So
Every
I understand it's
yeah.
very complicated to get a judge removed, but I want to know what the bar is, because it's like
Yeah.
I just don't know.
All the experts that were talking today on multiple media were talking about that now Jack probably has everything he wants, because this is first of all, jury instructions are supposed to be super basic,
I think
right?
so. Follow the law.
And not discussed until the end, right? Or just about near the end. I'm sure
Right.
there's a specific time frame, right? Um, you you don't ask counsel for scenario briefs, right? She is literally so far out of her depth that this, I think, is what's going to get her removed, because she doesn't seem to understand the order of operations in which you conduct a case or a hearing, right? So
I
I
don't
am
disagree on the surface, but I don't know what the mechanisms are. Like what's the level?
he
Just
just
because we don't, just because somebody doesn't like her ruling, I don't know if
no
that is foundational
he's
enough to do it.
gathered he's okay. So we have to remember that on multiple occasions she's been disciplined.
Correct.
Okay,
Or overruled. Right.
or
Yeah.
oh, well, no, disciplined. She's basically been told that for all intents and purposes, she's not very bright and get your shit in one bag and carry on, right?
Yeah.
If you read what was written, they weren't being obtuse. They were being very direct and very clear, right?
Yeah.
With their guidance to her, kind of like a mentor would be, right?
Right.
Jack now has enough of these instances stacked up to where he could just go to the appellate court and be like, hey, listen, there's now a pattern. It is clear that she does not know what she's doing. And I want a new judge. And most likely they're going to grant it because the missteps are stacking up and it's going to be detrimental, right? So just from a fairness perspective, right?
Somebody made this comment in the chat, and I've been thinking about this too. Like, is she doing this to get herself removed so she doesn't have to be part of this case, but she can say for the future that I did everything I could? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
just again, I don't
I,
disagree with what you're saying, but I just don't know what the mechanisms are. Like, does it have to include, because does she can she not give jury instructions before a court date is set? I don't know. Can she interpret the law any way in which she sees fit? That's within bounds as long as it's very clear that that is specific to what the instructions are. But why would you ask a
well,
question that the only answer is, like I said earlier, I want you to provide a hypothetical for one
right,
scenario is the earth is flat, one scenario is the earth is square. Neither
right.
of those are true, so what's the point?
And the law she's citing has nothing to do with the issue.
The PRA doesn't have anything to do with this at all. It's about
Right,
obstruction of justice. That's it.
right,
That's what this
right,
case is about.
right.
It's weird.
And
It's just a
and
weird thing, man.
that's what's so strange. It's like, how do you not even know the government's position
Yeah,
as to why they brought this? I mean, it's not, it's not like they don't write it.
right,
It's not like it's not in all the briefs, right?
right.
The charges are crystal clear.
They
And
are.
I don't remember reading that the PRA was in any of them.
It wasn't. I mean, it's a first of all, it's a civil issue. The PRA
Right.
is a civil issue, and this is
Correct.
criminal. It doesn't. It
Right.
doesn't. It doesn't apply. And there was rumors that that was going to be the Trump team's defense would be the PRA, but when you get into the elements of the PRA, we can read it again. It's very, 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 very clear
Yeah.
about what the differences are between these things. Right? It's obvious that this is an obstruction of justice. We know what presidential records are. How can you make a claim that sharing information about subs with an Australian billionaire is like
Yeah.
a coaster you got from the ambassador of Finland?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
I mean, how in
Right.
anyone's right mind would people say that those are the same things? And no, a president does not have unilateral authority to determine what is presidential and what is personal. And that's one of the angles that Eileen Cannon was talking about. Like,
Yeah.
so my options are to show the jury all the classified information or accept the fact that the president can deem whatever he wants a personal record. That's a
Yeah.
win-win. That is a win-win for the defense. And that, again, MAGA, you can be cheering, but that's not the rule of law. That's not how this applies. It's equal protection under the law for everybody, including the prosecution, right? Everybody has a right to the law as it's written. And I don't see how that applies in this case. I really don't. I really don't. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'd like to mention
please.
that I was at the TikTok shop earlier today. And I see a lot of people who have deals to help promote certain things. I'm going to make a comment. Never trust a skinny chef. Thank you. This has been a public service announcement on behalf of people who have a shape. That shape is a circle. Embrace the shape you're in. Thank you. Never trust a skinny chef. TikTok shop, we love you. I would love to have products to hawk, perhaps for the hair or for the belly. You know, maybe you've
Sure.
got a man-sized apron I can wear when I'm barefoot in the kitchen
Sure.
cooking for my ladies. Let me know.
Hey, Heath Dazel Zero, you know, for some reason, bro, you think there's 1.5 men up here crying. Why don't you come up and equal that out because you're a half a man, and then that would make two.
Oh,
So, but for some reason you can spam in the chat, but you don't want to have a chit chat. Anyway,
that'd be
um,
like a movie, 2.5 Men. Or was that a TV show? Was that a movie or a
probably
TV show?
a TV show.
Where's my
Um,
wife, Jen?
TikTok. Our intention during these live broadcasts to only provide fact-based information to the absolute best of our ability. We strive to never spread misinformation or to platform those that do. Opinions of our guests or commenters are theirs and theirs alone and do not reflect those of the hosts. Hate speech is not allowed, and we are diligent about policing it. This platform is for educational purposes only. Thank you. We love the TikTok shop. And Vermont maple syrup is better than Canadian any day.
Whoa.
Just
Yeah.
saying.
I mean, you know, listen,
Okay.
if I can be
It's Heath,
honest,
by the way.
whoever came up with maple syrup should have a day on the calendar.
So, Heath, why would you make that comment?
Why wouldn't I make that comment?
No, I asked you, why would you make that comment?
Because there's a man trying to be a woman as your co-host.
What?
I'm trying to be a woman, and how is that, Heath?
What are you saying? You are a woman?
Keith, who hurt you that you have those opinions?
And can you show me on this doll where you were hurt? And by doll, I mean right here, this doll. Can you show me on this doll where somebody
Show me on
hurt
that doll
me,
where you have a
please?
vagina.
Seriously, Heath, who hurt you?
The country right now is a
And
mess.
why are you so bigoted?
A mess. I'm not a bigot. I'm realistic.
No,
I'm a
you're a
realist.
bigot, man. You're
Yeah,
a
you're a
bigot.
bigot.
I'm a
Yeah,
realist.
You're
You
certainly a
guys are
bigot.
freaks.
So let's start from scratch. Okay, hold on. Let's start it over. All right, let's start over. What did you have for dinner tonight?
I'm gonna have
Nobody gives a shit. Get out of here, bigot. Oh my god, unbelievable. Again, that's the weakness that is our friends on the right.
I'm wondering
Yeah,
if he
but-
thought
Hello, Anthony.
that was going to hurt my feelings.
Nah, he didn't.
Don't listen to it, Anthony.
Yeah,
What, Peter?
How you doing, guys?
we're
We're
doing
well.
good, Peter.
How are you?
Yeah. I've been posting in the chats to people because I've been reading what they've been saying, and I see from both sides what they're trying to say, but I wanted to try and simplify something for them. In life,
For whom in particular, Peter? Simplify what?
simplify what you're trying to explain to other people about Donald Trump.
Okay.
In my lifetime, I've made questionable mistakes, which I've had to take responsibility for. And I can't say I'm not guilty for it because I've made those mistakes, if you can understand my meaning.
Sure.
So I've accepted responsibility and taken the punishment that goes with it. Now, Donald Trump says he's innocent, yet he's trying to stop the court case from going through. Now, to me, if he's innocent, he's got no reason to stop it because he'll be found innocent the moment it goes through court. There'll be no evidence that can be provided to prove that he's guilty in any way, shape, or form if he is innocent. Now, I'm saying it in a hypothetical way simply because I want to keep it a level base so there's no misinformation. Because he could be guilty, he could be innocent. We can't prove that until he goes through court. The problem is people are trying to support a man who does not want to go through court to prove he's innocent. Now, by all means, if he gets to become prime minister, what they've got to realise is
President.
they're
I hear you.
looking at one or two things. He's either going to be an innocent man that hasn't committed a crime that can be proven through court, or he's going to be a criminal that's being put into power. That's the two sides of the story. that people are trying to look at. And people who want to support Trump have got to take into account if he is guilty, they're putting a criminal into the White House. That is, if he is found guilty. So, what I would ask people to think about before they put you down or put any other person down in these lives is what if? Think about it in a hypothetical way. What if? If he's got nothing to hide, he's got no reason not to go to court. He's got no reason to put it off because he'll be found innocent, because there'll be no evidence that will stand up in court to prove that he's guilty. I just want to help people make better choices for themselves because it's your country. Both Republican and democracy doesn't really matter which side wins. It's about how you live life and
It
what
does matter,
decisions
though,
you
Peter.
make.
It does matter.
No,
though.
yeah, no, it matters. It matters in how people are treated. Like what you're talking about with the immigration and everything else. If someone goes into power and takes away everything that you've fought to strive for through your constitutional rights and disrupt all of that, everything that's been built to make your country as great as it is, and it is a great country, then how can you justify the downfall for it? Because you're taking away everything that you've created.
couple
All
couple
those,
things. A couple things. I don't
yeah, go
I
on.
don't believe America is great. I think America has incredible potential to be great.
Okay, yeah,
I do
no,
not
I
let me
actually,
just finish. I don't
go on.
accept
Sorry.
that premise. I don't accept that premise. Not when we have some of the, as well as the most powerful nation on earth, and we have children that are starving, and we have families that are houseless, and we have all those kinds of things. So we're far from great. I want to just jump back on something you said earlier. It does matter because if we cannot if we cannot agree as a nation that human rights has to be the priority, and there's only one party currently as feckless at times as the Democratic Party can be, but it is the only party that exists in our country right now that is prioritizing human rights. So you can't have a conversation about equity and compromise and trying to solve problems on taxes and healthcare unless there becomes a solid foundation of conversations about prioritizing human rights. That has to come
I
first.
understand that and I respect that. I really do.
Cool.
I mean, I'm just trying to keep it where it's all about facts and
Same here.
not for me. I'm in the UK. We've got so many problems this side of the border.
Sure.
It's unbelievable. But compared to what you lot are going through, I can't begin to imagine what's going to happen for all those people, kids, all those people who are fighting and struggling to become who they are and who they want to be if that all falls.
Yeah, and that's why we're
We-
having these conversations, and that's why we have to
And
expose this,
that's
and that's the
why I
point.
admire, that's why I say you're a great country. Despite I understand why you say what you say, all I see is what you're trying to do now. You're trying to keep the country that you love and cherish and respect in a state of mind that protects everybody. And that's what makes you great. It's not about who's, yeah, it is about who helps you get there. But it's not about power, it's about responsibility. It's about giving you everything that you need as people to be that something that you need to be. The education, the life that you need to grow into. I mean, look at you and Anthony. You are motivational speakers for a lot of people. And
Thank you.
I'll be honest with you, you may not see it, but you are. You are amazing gentlemen. And I have a
Thanks.
high respect for you both.
Appreciate that.
And I have a high respect for everybody that's coming through this live that's viewing their opinion. Although there are people that are coming through that are just natural, what's the nicest word you could say?
Not as informed as they should be.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
You took the words out of my mouth, but thank you for doing that.
Sure.
I don't like putting people down because I don't see the point. Even if they deserve it, it's to me makes me no better than them. So
That's fair. I respect that. Then I would say you're a
I
better man than I am.
I want people to just think about what's best in the long run for everybody, not just what they believe, but what it's going to be for everyone in the whole, just to make good decisions for life down the line.
Hmm.
Other than that, you two are absolutely amazing.
Thank
I
you, Peter.
love the fact that you debate things with such um, restraint. Is the best word I can put, because
Appreciate that.
yeah, you don't let people get to you as much as most other people would. And that's not an easy thing to do when you're doing what you do. So, gentlemen, I will say good night because it's
Thank you, Peter.
nearly 11:30 in the evening here. And complete respect to you both for what you're trying to do.
Appreciate you,
Uh,
Fred. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
and
Peter.
Have a
take
good night.
very care. And to everybody in the live, you're great people. Just make better decisions, please.
Thank you, Peter. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Bye
very
now.
much. Bye.
Cheers.
There you
Motivational
go.
speaker.
I'll take it.
I mean, I've been accused of a lot of things. That's not been on the bingo card. I'll take it too.
Sure. No problem.
Yeah.
A few things that he said that I think it's important that we talk about. Obviously, I appreciate a person's perception or perspective. I guess it'd be perception of our country from the outside looking in, right? What they see, and and that's we always like to see that, and I think people look at America still in a very positive light from where they are. When you're in it, I'm proud to say that I'm American, but I'm disgusted at what, again, not paying attention to the things that we should. And everybody should be critical of our government. Everybody should. There should be no. I'm going to bring up Nikki. There should be absolutely no priority other than human rights because we can't get to everything else unless we prioritize those. Hi, Nikki. Sorry, we had a lot to cover there with Rollo.
No, sorry, nothing.
Appreciate that.
No, you're good. Not a problem. I don't know what's going on with the chat today, but the hate is absolutely insane. So I'm gonna make the rules for you guys. Please listen carefully because the rules are one time only. We are not any more warning. We're done with the warning. We've been warning for an hour and a half, and you guys don't seem to get the point. So from now on, any hate speech will be blocked or muted for the rest of the live. Depending on what it is, you will be finished. There is no hate speech. There is no spamming. There is no disrespect for anybody in the box, whether you agree with them or not. I don't care if they're MAGA and you're blue. I don't care if they're blue and you're MAGA. The person up in the box gets respect. Any veteran that comes up here, I don't care, the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Anything, you stay stolen valor, anything like that, I'll boot you. It's unacceptable. Please don't type in caps. The caps are for us mods to talk to each other and us to talk to Vax and Anthony. You guys have been doing pretty good with that, and I do appreciate that. So do the mods. Misinformation is also going insane tonight. Please stop with the misinformation. If you have something and you have proof, please bring it up to them. More than happy to talk to you about it. They'll match your energy. If you can't look it up at the time, but you have the site or anything, Anthony might be able to look it up for you because he kind of lives for this stuff. They're just here to have a conversation and match energy. But if you guys have a question, there are four or five of us down there. You see the things with next to our names that say mod. We're more than happy to answer questions. If you have a question that you want asked, that's an important question to one of the guys, we're more than happy to do that too. I've been seeing this a lot too lately. They will not tell you where they live. It's just not going to happen. If you have a question, you can message them out of here, but that's just not appropriate. It's just not going to happen. So Please just be respectful and stop with the hate, please. No transphobia, no homophobia, no xenophobia, no the G word. Don't say it, because please, like, it'll get the live taken down, and our job as mods is to protect the live, and we will do that no matter what. So
thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a pain in the ass.
You're not. You're not at all. Sorry we didn't get to you sooner. Appreciate you very much. It's a tough
Did
job.
you say I'm a babysitter? Is that what you said?
No, I'm saying you do an incredible job. I'm sorry we didn't get to you sooner. No, I said I'm sorry we didn't get to you sooner. That's my bad.
I just see it's a long day. Okay, guys, have a wonderful live, and
thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you.
Than's love.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's an example as to why we have the best.
Tell your wife I said hello.
My line. Get out of here.
But I talked to his wife today.
Appreciate you very much, Nikki. Thanks a lot.
No problem. And I love you, all the mods. Bye.
We know. Again, just be an adult. Let's just be a grown up. All right, we can pivot now to our next layer. Everybody, please tap the screen, like and share the live. Again, we have a gifting goal this evening. Looking for trying to get to 60 subscribers. Amazing that we have as many as we do. There's information about pay apps in my link in my bio. There's a link tree there. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, I would appreciate that, because we're working on developing more content for that. Right now, it's kind of a placeholder, and that's on me. But I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I promise. I'm getting there. The fact that the live still stays up for 3 hours while I'm here is a testament to Gen X problem solving. Good evening, Dave.
Hola, senors. How you doing, Anthony? How you doing, everybody? Again, sorry about that.
No, it's all good, dude. It's all good.
Busy evening.
So I put you on the spot earlier when I messaged you, but I tried to navigate my way through the alien canon stuff, and then the ruling from Trump's response to the the trial in D.C. In preparation for the oral arguments coming up in April. So have you had a chance to peek behind the curtain regarding alien canon's ruling at all?
Oh yeah, it's a 2-page ruling. It wasn't like it was all that difficult, and it's insane.
I can't really hear you. Hold on, bro.
I'm sorry. I said it's a 2-page ruling, so it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts what she did.
So let me ask the question. The question that I had for you, and maybe you can help me unpack this, was:
Sure.
It seems like first of all, is it out of bounds or abnormal for a judge to talk about jury instructions prior to a trial date being set?
Yes, and.
Okay.
It's always a yes and, because this is trial work 101. The judge.
What are you making? Jury, by the way.
Well, I'm just pouring myself a drink.
Okay.
Of Diet Coke, because I'm talking about Donald Trump.
Got it.
But so the judge's role is the trier of law. The role of the jury is the trier of fact. Legal questions, such as if a document does or does not fall under the PRA, is a legal question. It is not a factual question. It is not for a jury to decide that document X is a Presidential Records Act document, document Y is not, document Y is a personal document. For her to say that in a ruling, say it with her whole chest, is wacky madness. A jury, Joe Schmo, is not equipped to determine the law, determine if something falls under the law. When you do jury instructions, the jury instructions are very simple. If you believe that the defendant committed these acts, did X, then they are guilty. If not, they are not guilty. To lay on a jury a legal definition is nuts. It's absolutely fucking nuts. And this is what she's done. And she did it in a very interesting way. The way she did it, it's not really appealable. The only thing that Jack Smith can do is file what's called a writ of mandamus. Writ of mandamus, yeah. A writ of mandamus is just you go to the court and you say, someone is doing something very wrong under the color of law and it needs to be fixed. It's a very high bar. It's very difficult. I've never done it in the I don't practice in the federal sphere, so I imagine
we were talking
it'll
about
be a pain in
that
the ass.
earlier, and that was the question that I asked. Anthony and I went back and forth a little bit trying to determine what. I mean, I know that there's a track record that she's made some questionable judgments, we'll call it, questionable decisions, and because the analogy that I really like that I've heard people talking about is basically what she's asking Jack Smith to do from a hypothetical perspective is give me one scenario where the earth is flat and one scenario where the earth is square. So obviously neither apply. So if you're giving jury, like you said earlier, if you're giving jury instructions to follow the law and she's misinterpreting the law, now how can that stand without being, vetted, adjudicated, or whatever else?
And therein lies the rub. It's not. She's not even supposed to give jury instructions to follow the law. She is supposed to explain the law to the jury correctly, and the jury is supposed to apply the facts to her explanation to see if the defendant committed the act.
Got it.
Or acts. The jury's job is not to interpret the law, and that is what she is contemplating doing. It's crazy madness, and frankly, I think that Jack Smith should do it simply to throw it into the 11th Circuit's hands and give them the opportunity to recuse her off this case. She has committed one grievous error after another. She has been overturned. This is one case. She's been overturned twice on one case, and these weren't
complicated,
like,
right? Not
no, they
complicated.
they weren't calls that you needed instant replay to determine, to use it, to use the football analogy.
Okay.
These were calls that a blind person could determine.
Okay.
Are you blind, ref? This one is, or either blind or in the bag, right?
Right.
And it's really getting out of hand. It's making the entire judiciary look stupid.
Right.
I think for that reason, Jack Smith should do it.
Right. So because again, the way I interpreted it, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that it's one or the other in regards to the jury. Either the jury gets granted security clearance to look at the documents that in question, or they have to take Trump's word for it, or the defendant's word for it, that he was able to classify these as personal records under the PRA. Is that close to accurate?
I've never done a case like this, so my assumption is with a case like this, if the jury is going to look at any of the documents, they're going to have some kind of limited clearance.
Right.
This is a process that I actually am sort of familiar with because I have represented over the years in my family law practice a couple of people who worked for three-letter agencies. And I had to speak with the Department of Defense and the Department of State, a couple of lawyers there. They explained to me what I needed to do. I had to give them my social security number and a few other things. So they ran a background check to make sure that their employee could speak to me about what they did, even in the broadest terms, as in, I am employed by X.
Right. I got a question from somebody that asked in the chat about how are tactics like this allowed, and I guess the question, that's kind of where I'm going, so thank you for teeing that up. So I know that judges have a lot of discretion. So my concern about double jeopardy, and follow my logic on this. So in theory, this case could get to trial under the conditions that they currently have, and Jack Smith could make his case, and the judge could throw it out, and because of double jeopardy, they couldn't retry it again, right?
Well, they would appeal. They would appeal at that point. At that point, you get an appeal.
Okay, so
that's the game. And the game is very simple. See,
got it.
The game is this game isn't to win. The game is to delay.
Correct.
In the hope that he's convicted. That's the game. And
or not convicted.
I've never seen it.
Found innocent, found not guilty. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but I've never seen a case, at least in modern times, when a judge was so obviously in the bag for a defendant. There have been mob cases in like the 60s where that was the case, right?
Yeah.
This is like that. Every single time that this judge comes close to kind of a question, she'll rule for the defendant, no matter what. And that's nuts, considering the facts in this case are so simple. Okay, the facts are not complicated.
Right. Because equal protection under law applies to both sides, right?
Well, yes, there's that, but this isn't an equal protection situation.
Right.
This is a situation where a judge is being, I'm gonna say too clever by half, and if he wins, she's going to get an appointment. She's going to get to the appellate courts, possibly to the Supreme Court.
Sure.
If he loses, I'm going to say God help her, because if he loses big enough, if he drags the ticket all the way down, and they get less than 60, they get less than 60% in the Senate, or 66% in the Senate, it's very likely going to be. She's going to be tried in the Senate and impeached.
That's right.
I could see that happening. I easily could see that. Yes,
so you're in the camp. You're in the camp that there's enough there to for Jack Smith to go, whether it be writs of mandamus or whatever it is, to appeal this to the appellate to get her recused. You're in that camp?
I think there was enough after the first time after she stuck her nose into a federal investigation, something that is the judiciary isn't. So we have three branches of government: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. When there's a criminal investigation, it is in the hands of the executive. It is only when it goes to court that it gets into the hands of the judicial. She stuck her fucking nose into the investigation prior to indictment. She stuck her nose.
That's right.
It was a ridiculous situation, which the 11th Circuit lambasted her for. They bench slapped her. And here she is again. It's blowing my mind.
Are there ever scenarios where the circuit would step in and do this themselves without a prosecutor asking for recusal?
No. So the rules are fairly clear, and the only court that doesn't have to follow the rules is the Supreme Court. The rules are very clear that there needs to be...
You guys keep talking. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. I can't hold it anymore.
Oh, go. Relief. Sweet, blessed relief. But what I was saying is the rules are very clear as to when an appellate court can take a case, and there needs to be an appeal. They can't just step in, what's called sua sponte, by themselves. There has to be an appeal. There has to be an appealable decision. There has to be something where they have a reason to act. You left me too, Anthony? Okay, I'll just read the comments then.
No, I was on mute. My apologies. Can you hear me?
Oh no. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. When I find most astounding, right, is how people like this judge continue to prove my point that it's so easy to fail upward in the United States if you have the right skin color and you're connected to the right people. She certainly doesn't have the talent or the apparent intelligence to be at the level she is at, or at least she hasn't demonstrated that. But it is so fascinating how so many people continue to fail upward in their careers and get awarded for it, right?
I'll put it to you this way. That is not a situation that is only isolated to this country. Any nation, whoever and whatever the preferred group is,
Yeah.
will always fail upwards. I mean, again, talking to my parents and when my grandparents were alive, my grandparents about what life was like under the Soviets in Russia, in Latvia, in Ukraine, and it's the same shit. It's this. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you do it. If you're loyal, you get the job, and that's
Right.
to to the credit of this country. While that has been true to a certain extent in
Hey
government, it
there.
has never been true this hard.
Yeah. Yep.
Hi, Bridget. You were requested.
Yeah, so I've been a facility security officer dealing with clearances, classified document control, personnel security clearances. I was an investigator for OPM. Um, so within regards to the
Dave, I'm going to
declassification,
mute you. You got a ton of background noise, bro.
oh, sorry. And I'm sorry if there's like my son is on Xbox in the
No,
other
not
room,
you.
so
He's got whatever's going on in his kitchen. Okay.
um, but I wanted to, if you guys have questions about the president can technically he can declassify anything while they're president, not after. However, there's a process to declassification. So
Okay.
like if each classified document is numbered, so if there's I'll say 1,500 or 1,000 documents of copies of the same document, each one is numbered and tracked. Um, And if the president decides to declassify it, he'll declassify this document, but then that declassification gets disseminated down. And the fact of the matter is that it was never disseminated down to anybody else. So everybody else who had the other, I'll say 999 copies of that same document, never still had to treat it as though it was classified because it was still because Trump never followed the proper procedures for
Okay.
declassification.
So then I
Can
have
I
a
ask a
question
simple
about
question?
that. Hang on one second,
Go
Dave.
for it.
So I have a question about that, Bridget, because I understand what you're saying, that the power does reside with the president to declassify, and you said there's a
It,
process. So don't the agencies involved also have to be part of that decision before a classification order can be given? Or is that
there's rules regarding the classification. If you're creating software or a document or like a policy, like not necessarily policy, but a information regarding something that is classified, there's policies regarding how to classify a document and mark it as classified.
okay?
And then for documents that are TS, TSSCI, um, secret, confidential, there's processes and timelines regarding those. So it's like if this document was classified, let's say January 2nd, 2015, and it's classified secret, within 10 years, it can be downgraded to confidential, and then it would be downgraded again to unclassified. Unless a higher authority decides to unclassify it, which generally comes down to presidential powers.
Okay.
And so
So,
there's different, but one of the big things is that, and this is where it applied to Snowden and Chelsea Manning, is part of why or how they were able to be charged is because they had both signed the SF 312, which is a non-disclosure, it's a lifetime non-disclosure agreement between you and the government for accessing any sort of classified document unless it's been declassified. And so that's how they were held on those or charged with um, their crimes because of the SF 312 in that accountability. So
okay.
did Trump ever sign the SF 312? I don't know.
Does he have to as president?
I don't know. But see, the thing is that prior to that, once you are which baffles me to the nth degree, once you are the nominee for the major political parties, you start getting intelligence briefings
We talked about that yesterday.
being
Yeah.
prior to being elected.
Not a law, just a tradition.
It's not a law, it's a courtesy. But
Right.
but my thought would be under that courtesy, because you're not just granted a clearance, that you would still have to, like, for any employee that I've ever had, um, as soon as they receive their clearance, I have them sign their SF-312. They could never see a classified document in their entire career, but they have a clearance. And just in case you come across it, you've signed your SF-312. Your clearance isn't in, like, you have to, in what was used to be called JPAS, it's DFARS now, is you have to put in your SF-312 date that it was signed in order to make your clearance active and valid. So I would think that he had to have signed it at some point. He probably
So
doesn't remember, and sure as hell didn't read it.
So the power. Okay, let me understand this, because we talked about this yesterday and about how, just again, traditions be damned. In a situation like this, you've got a person who's under indictment, for withholding and obstructing justice and sharing hate. Specifically though, Bridget, isn't there a vetting? Now I know that he's a former president, but isn't there a vetting process for anybody to gain security clearance?
Oh yeah, there's you'll fill out your SF-86,
Okay.
which goes through the last 10 years of
Well, let me ask it a
history.
different way. Let me ask it a different way. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
But
but I want to ask it a different way.
for an elected official to get a certain level of clearance, and I'll just, like, even in, not even an elected official, even if you are joining the military and you're a U.S. citizen, you will be given you'll be granted an interim secret clearance,
Okay.
and have access up to secret without a full investigation.
Okay, and because he's a former president, had already had the unlimited access, or
He's
whatever
already
it
had,
might be.
yeah, he's TSSCI, full scope poly, Yankee white, without any of the investigation, which is just pathetic and sad.
And because his status has changed since then, that he's under indictment, that not change his ability to view those documents at the same level he had previously?
It should. If you look at the, if you're a regular person, absolutely. That's the best way to put it. If you are a regular person, absolutely. There's people who lose their clearance because they declare bankruptcy from medical bills.
Or can't come up with $450 million to pay a fine, a civil
Right,
penalty, for example.
but then in that, but like simply like Jared Kushner got, he had access at the SCI level, but with that amount of foreign contacts and foreign money, and then like you look at their, like, one of the questions, and I can't remember which number it is, but one of the sections of the SF-86 specifically goes into foreign bank accounts.
Right.
And your foreign contacts. Like, I have a mom friend who lives in Canada, and I have to put her down, and they like grilled me from one side and down the other about, I'm like, we're literally mom friends. Our kids are the same age. That's it. And it was, the world was ending. But it's very interesting, how from an elective, how the adjudicative guidelines for security clearances basically goes out the door as soon as you are elected. For the House and the Senate, it goes out as soon as you are elected.
Okay.
For presidential candidates, it's as soon as you're the nominee.
So, Dave, did you have a question?
And then
for
if
Anthony?
their family, doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
My question is this, and I'm not being facetious, I'm being completely serious. So the process involves the president. The president cannot, as Trump claimed, declassify something with his mind. He has to submit it for declassification. It has to go through a process. It has to go through probably 2 or 3 hands, and then ultimately it gets declassified. It's not simply a matter of, well, I thought it's declassified, therefore it's declassified. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, that was my thing.
And
That was what I was waiting to ask.
And then
yeah, and
disseminate
so
it down,
like
and then disseminate it down to everybody
because
else
it's
involved, right?
exactly like it's a whole process. Like, and not that Trump has ever been one to follow a freaking process. It'd be too complicated. Um, However, you can't just think it. Just because I think I'd like to win the lottery doesn't mean I'm going to get a winning lotto ticket.
Really? Damn.
I know, right? Um, but like you can't just will it into existence. You can't just
Right.
will this. Like you now, if he said to whoever was in control of those classified who was their security officer who had the classified documents, look, this item, I want to declassify this item. That's all he would have to verbally say, and then that security officer would take the appropriate steps to do it. And I will look it up because it's so rare that a president actually declassifies something. A lot of times they will extend declassification of something for a longer period of time. It's very rare for presidents to declassify stuff.
Anthony, did you
Um,
have any questions for Bridget on this? And thank you, Bridget, for jumping in. It's great to talk to somebody who's got the inside knowledge. I know that Anthony's had clearance based on his positions in the service in the past, but
Yep.
I'm just
One, I'm
not
gonna
allowed.
give
I'm
you a
just not allowed to know
follow-up.
my daughter's phone password. That's the only security clearance that I just don't get. Wish I could get it, but just no. Just kidding.
as a mom, trust
Yeah.
me, get your kids phone password. You always want to see what's going on there.
I know. I hear you. I'm trying. It's a trust game we play. Anyway, I digress. Anthony.
Yeah, section 16 is all about your friends. Section 18 is all about your relatives. I've filled this out before, so I'm pretty familiar with it. One of the things I find most fascinating is the levels of bureaucracy, and that there are the persons who authored documents that fall into classified um, sections, right? And those move up and down accordingly. Then there are the owners of the document, right? And when I
Correct.
was looking and researching these layers, right? Like you literally have to go, oh, okay, Joe Smith wrote it. Does Joe Smith still work for the government? Okay, who took over Joe Smith's job? Is that person, right? Like, and then you have to ultimately find the person that's literally responsible for that piece of paper, and
Yep.
then that's where it starts, right? The level of complication
It
in
is
trying to get
so
something
complicated.
declassified is so annoying and complicated. And this, to your point, is why, generally speaking, people just kind of kick the can down the road and give it another 10 years because it's so hard finding the person's responsible, the original author, the original, like there's all of this stuff you have to put together. It's not like he can just kind of be Karnak and go, all things I've ever seen or touched are right, and then open the envelope and it says declassified. So I'm rather happy that this process is in place. I'm
Hmm.
super happy that you're here because I will hit you up offline because there's a lot of things that my nerd brain needs answers to for what you can answer, right? But
Oh, no problem.
I'm
I've
now
been doing this for 20
completely
years. I'm a complete and utter
oh
nerd about it.
nice. Yay!
And
I have a
I
nerd friend.
and I like hyper fixate on details and the nuances in the wording of like they changed the NISPOM to the 32 CFR Part 1 117. Pain in the ass
Yeah.
to say, but there it is. I loved NISPOM. It was nice and short.
So, Bridget,
But
I have a question that
go
comes
for it.
up a lot. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to make sure I get this in before I forget. So, we know that various levels of persons having positions in our government have access to data and documents, whether they be SCI or whatever it might be. Need to know, I guess we'll call it that, if that's
Yeah.
appropriate. So, the commentary regarding members of Congress, senators, members of the House, um, people who like again Joe Biden having documents at his UPenn office as a senator. So there's a lot of talk about that. Now, can you help our all of us understand that if a document ends up with a senator and a member of Congress, whether they're on a committee or something like that, does it fall under a different category? And what does the their ability to possess that document, if that
Okay.
makes sense, the question I'm asking.
So, and this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And like I do live in the Northern Virginia, DC metro area. And
Okay.
so I literally was going to, I'll say it, phone a friend
Gotcha.
regarding who works on the Hill for a congressperson and find out because there aren't, within the 32 CFR, there are no differentiating rules between members of the House, members of Congress, the executive branch, and industry, technically. And industry would be any business that does work with the government and has a facility clearance.
Okay.
There aren't two sets of rules, technically. However, it's clear that there are. Because if I had, like, when I work at a facility that holds classified documents, in the morning when I first get into the office, I have to open the safe, log it in a book, verify that nothing has been altered or changed within those documents, or like within the safe, relock it. Anytime somebody needs to review a document, they have to, they're only allowed to view it within that classified space. And this
Skiff
is
or
only
whatever it
for,
might be, right?
well, and it's not even a skip. It's literally just a locked room
Okay.
with no windows.
Okay.
And so that they have to review documents within that enclosed space, just because we did have employees who were not cleared because there wasn't a need for them to be. And they can review the documents there, and then like the time they take it out and the time they put it back in is all logged in a logbook. And at the end of the day, I have to verify that all of the classified documents that we have are back in the safe. And that's like start and end of day shifts are done. And if you have multiple security personnel, like somebody will do the beginning, somebody will do the afternoon. And that's how that works. Like it's from an industry perspective, it's very hard for me to understand how somebody walks out with classified documents and then they end up in someone's garage.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you
Because we
say,
could lose, like, as a facility and as the FSO in charge of that, I could lose, as an organization, we could lose our facility clearance, which means our ability to do classified work with the government, which could be tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you're somebody like Lockheed or Boeing, like billions.
okay. So then from what I'm hearing you say, that there are
Sorry, I have dogs.
no, it's okay. So so I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, that they're all parties involved in the legislative branch and the executive branch specifically are governed under or supposed to be governed under the same rules.
Yeah, there's
But
only one set of rules on how to handle classified documents
gotcha.
and classified information and the rules surrounding that.
So
There
then the
are
question,
additional rules like for industry within regards to how to get your facility clearance and all that other stuff. But beyond that, Nora, stop it. Sorry,
it's okay.
dog on the counter.
It's okay.
Boxers.
Dave, did you have a question?
I do actually. So your perspective is that of, I don't know, were you working for the government? Were you working for a contractor like Lockheed or Boeing or something? But my question is this: so you have the president, which is basically willy-nilly. You have obviously the rules you work under, the rules that contractors work under. What about, for example, congressional members of the Intelligence Committee who do have, or the Gang of Eight, who do have to have access to classified information? What happens when they're done with it? Is there somebody on their staff, like a liaison with a three-letter agency, who's there to make sure that the documents are presented, and then when they're done looking at them, that they're, basically smurfed back into wherever
Yeah,
they
they're
need to go?
secured.
Right.
That's how it's supposed to be. Is that there's a security but this is why I said I'd phone a friend. I'll
Sure.
text a friend in a little while when we're done here. Because I'm not super familiar with
Okay.
if you are on the Intel group in Congress, like because like if I'm moving, let's not moving, if I'm taking a document from point A to point B, and let's say it's a top secret or higher classification document, it's in a zipped, locked bag, and there's times where it has to be like handcuffed to your wrist.
We've all seen that movie.
Well, no, but it's if you look at the 32 CFR, that's within those are the rules within handling classified documents. And it sounds
I'm
I
saying it's
I
we've all
used to think it
seen
was
the
a
movie.
joke before I got into this industry. I thought it was a joke, and it's not. Um, so there's differences that um,
I think what
there's
I'm
definitely
hearing,
differences.
right? I think what I'm hearing through this is I think we all. It seems like maybe it's my own opinion. I'll sit on the island alone if I have to, but um, record keeping in our country seems like it's got some challenges. Needless to say, like it doesn't seem like there is. NARA
There isn't
seems
the
like
same requirement of accountability that industry has,
right. That's kind of where I was going. So it
yet
seems like
the
people
government
will,
has so much
yeah,
more.
right, exactly. I mean, again, the circumstances seem such that if there's, I mean, again, numerous examples, and then we create documents specifically around the Presidential Records Act to kind of to try to protect against future sort of indiscretions, if you will, and then we have. Then we have obstruction of justice, and then we have can they have this document, and then we have was this document declassified, and where was it sit? So it seems like it's really all over. So if there's anything that we've learned during this process is that we have a system of record keeping that probably needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Absolutely. And this is, you were saying that, and one of the things that I thought was, and over the years of doing this, is if you think back to um, the Navy Yard shooter, we changed the entire US government, changed their entire background investigation process and the frequency and how things are done, and moved to a continuous
Okay.
monitoring perspective versus if you have if you were granted in the past, if you were granted a secret clearance, your clearance was good for 10 years. And it was at the 9.5 year mark that you would resubmit paperwork, and then they'd go back the last 10 years. So you could be in a psych hospital, you could have been arrested. Now you are supposed to tell your security officer or if you're in the military, you're again a security officer. Anything that happens that would be bad or jeopardize your clearance.
Okay.
However, it wasn't until a former military person who was then working as a contractor, Ronan, enough, was working as a contractor that would that shot up and killed people versus I think it was it Fort Hood where somebody who
Yeah.
was active duty
Unalive.
military,
Let's be careful with our language if
oh
we
sorry,
could, please. Yep.
unalived,
Yep.
um, in a with a large quantity of a decent quantity of people, more
Mm-hmm.
than should have been,
Mm-hmm.
at Fort Hood,
Right.
but that they didn't change the rules for somebody who did it in the military, but only when it was a contractor. And I found that
Okay.
very interesting.
Well, Bridget, I appreciate you jumping in. I think it's always I learn a lot from people who work in
And if
areas
you
that I'm
have,
just reading
I'm
about.
I'm more than happy. Like, if message me whatever you want to answer questions, or
Okay.
Nikki knows how to get a hold of me.
Okay.
But I'm more than happy, especially as the things go down the
Sure.
classified document road, to answer anything I can.
Appreciate you very
I
much. Thanks
will
for joining.
I will call my friend on the hill.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot for joining. Appreciate you
All right.
jumping in. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Hey
Have a
guys,
good night.
Bye-bye.
do you have any more legal questions for me?
I don't, unless Anthony does. I've had enough
No.
legal questions tonight. I don't think I can handle any more.
Okay, guys, then I'll drop.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate
Have
you.
a good night, everybody.
You too.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Peace. I'll just add
Sure.
one comment
Sure.
here. So now I was in the military. It was a few days ago. um, and I remember distinctly the 4 briefings that I attended in which I had to get prior approval to be invited because my clearance at that time did not include those types of briefings.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty common in the small boat Navy because of the mission, right? So I distinctly remember like there being like a serious chain of custody with paperwork, right? Like paperwork was brought in by person X, paperwork was collected by person X had person Y on their hip. All this stuff was noted and recorded. And as soon as that information was no longer needed, the exact same way it came in the room was the exact same way it exited the room.
Gotcha.
Now, I think that's because one of the few things the military does very well
Tap the
is
screen, friends. Like and share, please. Thank you.
have discipline around those types of scenarios. Also, irrespective of my clearance, I was never allowed to touch those pieces of paper. Like
Sure.
I couldn't. I was in a room. There were pieces of paper that were being disseminated and discussed, and I was in a row of chairs, and the closest I got was probably 20 feet. I couldn't see what was there. I just, so I think there's a huge difference, and probably the same today, between how the military handles classified information versus
it seems like it.
apparent, like, it's not that it's lackadaisical, but again, there's these established traditions around white men who are trusted to be good stewards.
Yeah, when you combine bureaucracy and
despite all the
arrogance,
evidence.
yeah, bureaucracy and arrogance are probably not a good thing to have on
No,
the same when
no.
you're talking about documents. I thought we would pivot real quick. It's primary day in Ohio, and there's a big Senate race in Ohio. It's the Republican nominee who's going to go up against Sherrod Brown this fall. Sherrod Brown is a Democrat who does really really well in his state. He's a really good guy. He's like a John Tester from Montana, same kind of grassroots blue collar Republican. At last check, I think I just had the results. Bernie Moreno has actually now he's in second place. So Matt Dolan is the Republican who's leading. It's close. It's only 882 votes, but Bernie Moreno has been leading along. The reason I bring up Bernie Moreno's name, interestingly enough, is because he was at the rally in Ohio over the weekend, and he talked about. Well, I actually have the audio. I can play it. It's probably just easier. Hang on a second.
Yeah. Trigger warning before you play it.
Yeah.
Is that the guy that went off the rails at the Trump rally?
Yeah, but it's not. This is mild.
Yeah.
Imagine what that's like, what that feels like, and imagine who you get to meet.
When you go to heaven,
you get to meet the 55 people that signed our Declaration of Independence. You get to meet James Madison, Abraham Lincoln, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington.
Okay, the reason I play that is because that person is now in a neck and neck fight in Ohio to receive the Republican nomination to be a United States Senator, and none of those people signed the Declaration of Independence. None of them. By the way, same guy, Bernie Moreno, after vaulting into the top tier of contenders with a coveted endorsement from Donald Trump, of course, Moreno, who has shifted from a public supporter of LGBTQ rights to a hardline opponent, is confronting questions about the existence of a 2008 profile seeking, quote, men for one-on-one sex on a casual sexual encounters website called Adult Friend Finder. Hi, Looking for young guys to have fun with while traveling? Reads a caption on a photoless profile under the username Nardo19672. According to an AP source, review of the records made public through a massive and well-publicized data breach of the website, records also show the profile was last accessed about 6 hours after created under an email address assigned to Moreno. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the leading candidate to be the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate in Ohio.
Yeah.
Nice.
The same guy that said when they win, meaning he and Trump, that they're going to basically send back all asylum seekers and migrants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without
exactly.
exception.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a really
Yeah.
fine, upstanding citizen. Anyway.
Nothing
evening,
wrong
Heather.
with nothing
How are
wrong
you
with
today?
people going on Adult Friend Finder, though.
Of course not. No,
We're not
no
being
judgment
judged.
there. Nope, just the hypocrisy. Good evening, Heather. How are you tonight? Heather.
Oh, I'm good. Hi. How are you?
Fine.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to my phone right at the moment.
All good. What's on your mind this evening?
I'm just wondering, because if I remember right, when presidents, once you get the nominee, don't they start getting intelligence briefings?
Yeah, we were talking about that last night, and we touched on it earlier. It's not a law; it's more of a tradition, we feel like it's dangerous. And I was asking earlier about is there a review of the person who's about to receive this briefing? If you're under federal indictment, 91 charges, if you've been suspected of sharing classified information, would you still be granted access to more sensitive information? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I think they should not give him any kind of intelligence briefings whatsoever.
It would seem to be really weird that they would, but obviously, if you become the candidate, if you win the election, it would make sense from a continuity of government perspective. But as just the nominee, I don't see. Again, we had some harsh criticism yesterday for the Biden administration if they follow through with this, because again, it's not a law;
Good.
it's just a tradition.
Well, they better not do it with Trump, because you know where it's going to go. It's going to go straight to Putin.
Well, we don't know that. Let's not throw that out there. We don't want to make statements like that. We don't know that.
Yeah, well, I just don't think he should get him.
Yeah, I think we would all sort of agree that there's some danger there potentially. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything
Good.
else on your
'Cause
mind, Heather?
Nope, that was it.
Thank you very much for joining. We appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. Love the show.
Thanks.
Thanks, Heather.
All right.
Yeah, I'll refer to the headline that's in my frame.
Correct. Exactly. Good evening, friend. How are you tonight?
Swell. How about you?
Fine, thanks. What's on your mind this evening?
Sorry. I've been parked in the comments, like trying to just add little bits of information.
Sure.
So first of all, I have never been in the military, but I raised in military family, married into a military family, specifically the intel world. So I have a lot of osmosis absorption for a lot of what we're talking about.
Okay.
And so when it comes to like the information that specifically that was found for in Florida, a lot of I think it's important to highlight that in the indictment, it does not say it does not only specify classified documents, it specifies classified materials. And that
Right.
is a very important distinction, because materials can be photographs, materials can be USB drives, which in and of itself would be a violation of handling policies. But there's so many other things that can be other than just a document. And so one of the things that, when the previous, her name escapes me, I'm so sorry, but the woman who was up here before me, when she was talking about receiving briefings and stuff like that, the issue is that originating agencies those materials have already raised concerns at the National Security Council regarding information provided to Trump. Because like when when Barack Obama was out of office, Trump denied him access to information. It is a courtesy that former presidents are read in on their request, and Trump never allowed Obama to be read in on anything. Whereas, like, Obama read, he read in Bush, Bush read in Clinton. So it was it's a tradition. Yes, it's not a requirement. But the thing is like, since Trump left office, originating agencies have never said that they were comfortable with information being provided to Trump and him being read in on any issue at all. So since he left office, he has no more access to information. And once he's the candidate, at this point, it's significantly different because of the fact that we already have him being charged with, he's being charged under the Espionage Act.
Right.
So we already know that, he has issues. And we also have 4 intelligence agencies who have provided recommendations and assessments regarding Trump's support for foreign powers at the expense of the United States, specifically to our service members. And we also have, in 2021, at the end of that year, we had dozens and dozens of intelligence assets and agents who began to disappear, and others who became double agents for foreign powers and organizations. And it was very mysterious that this all started happening after Trump left office. And now we know that he had information. None of us know what that information was, but some of those jackets were empty. And we're not going to know the specifics, but it's enough for us to look at it and go, sometimes you don't have to see the rain coming down. You can just look at everything outside and see that it's wet and there are clouds in the sky to know that it has been raining.
Good enough.
Sometimes and so I think it's important that we acknowledge the fact that even if none of that happened, just for his financials alone, he would not be allowed to have a security clearance because of his financials. Because he is at such, because the amount of money, the judgments that he owes, all of those things, he would fail a financial check, and he would not be allowed to have a security clearance on his financials alone. Because essentially now we know that Trump you can buy him for $500 million. And that is a major, it's risk factor after risk factor after risk factor. And from a national security standpoint, it's just there's too many red flags to give this man any information beyond just surface level.
Yeah. My apologies.
Go ahead. Sorry. I just was
No, it's okay. I appreciate that. That was the question I was asking earlier, and I'm still trying to figure that out. I understand that it's a default, right, that the nominee then would get access to briefings, but the circumstances have changed because we've never had a former president or a nominee under federal indictment, and specifically one that involves violations of the Espionage Act. So to your point, I would imagine that there's a lot of agencies in the government saying, do not grant him these briefings, right? So again, the reporting was that the Biden administration is, considering, or whatever the language is, considering including him in these briefings. So I don't think that ship has entirely sailed yet, based on what you're describing. That's why I was asking earlier, there must be a vetting process. It can't just be, oh yeah, no problem, here you go. Here's the keys. Here's the keys to all of our secrets.
I think
there has to be, I would think.
I think it's more that, I think it's also, I think what he would get briefings wise would be very surface level.
Sure.
But I also think it's important that we know that ICE-5 documents were found in Florida.
Right.
And because of that, that's a lot of that intelligence did not originate from our own agencies. A lot of that was intelligence that was shared with us. So if we start passing that information to Trump, we're going to have allies who are going to stop sharing information if they know that it's going into his hands.
That's
because
really
we've already had allies state that they have concerns with him having their information. So we already have allies who have concerns about that. And it's just it's not just one risk factor. How many risk factors do we need to look at before we say this is a major national security threat?
Right. If we go back to the indictment, we can look. There's a list starting on page 32. There's they list some of the documents, not the specific documents, but how they were categorized. One document dated May 3rd, 2018, concerning White House intelligence briefing related to a various foreign country, labeled as top secret, no foreign special handling. White House intelligence briefing related to various foreign countries. Undated document concerning military capabilities of a foreign country and the United States with handwritten annotations in black marker. Top secret, no foreign. FISA. Let's see, document dated June 4th, 2020 concerning White House intelligence briefing related to another various country. Communications with a leader of a foreign country. Um, concerning military capabilities of a foreign country. That one's dated 5I. That one's dated 5I, or categorized as 5I. Updating documents concerning military attacks by a foreign country. So that's what they've shared in the indictment. And as we all know, we only get 10, 15, 20% of what they have when you see an indictment. So to your point, is it Kristen? Can I call you Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, these are the things that we know, right? So there's so much more out there. And again, I'm with you. I can't see how anybody, even to be honest, even MAGA, if they care about their country and they say they want to protect our soldiers, they want to protect our nation, even they should be a little bit concerned of someone with his under indictment, whether or not he's found guilty or not. He's under indictment to have access to this information and to be able to see it again after what he did with it the first time.
So like for an example, because I see like a lot of people who are talking about vetting in the comments, and I've heard you guys talking about it. Like for example, so if you were to say need to be able to carry a firearm in the presence of the president, okay, you would need to have a clearance called a Yankee White. In order to get that clearance, like you have to go through, they comb through the last 20 years of your life. And so my husband at one time had a Yankee White. And when he did, I mean, he doesn't have it anymore. He hasn't had it in years. But when that took place, they went back so far that my stepfather, who emigrated under the Southeast Asia Refugee Program in the 1970s, they needed all of the documentation to include the name of the judge who was at the hearing that granted him his citizenship. That is how far back they went. And we're talking about receiving a clearance in the 2010s.
Wow.
They went back 40 years. They went back 40 years for my husband to receive that clearance. And so like when we look at what they're willing to do, and they interview people who can verify your address, they go interview your employers, you have to give character references, like they dig into your life. And this is also, by the way, this is also why Kushner was not vetted, was not approved to receive security documents. Or national security information. And it was only because Trump ordered him to have access that he was granted it, because no agency approved him for access. He was too much of a security risk because of the financials. Like if you owe too much money to too many people, it becomes a massive red flag because of exploitation.
Yeah,
and that's,
leverage.
We can't look at Donald Trump. Exactly. Like we cannot look at Trump outside of that. And I'm sorry, but when we have, service members, when we have defense contractors, when we have government service employees, when we have people who are, millions of people who are all working in and around the US government, and all of them have to go through the vetting process, the fact that we should disregard that entire process for Donald Trump is very concerning.
I would agree.
Yep.
Thank you for that breakdown,
100%.
Kristen. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much for joining tonight. I really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night, guys.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
Be well. Thanks for joining. We don't know where this is going to go, and I would like to think that there are people that are involved in the decisions regarding this, that it's not going to be just follow the tradition. I can't imagine if enough people, and to Kristen's point, with all these agencies involved, saying, no, we can't do this. We'll see. We'll see. Those are decisions that are made. To her point, I could see surface level stuff, like we have 6 tanks and 24 aircraft carriers and a bunch of subs,
or have tank.
Exactly. That's right. So I guess we'll see. So Savvy, okay, Savvy Sniper, you don't like what we're saying, but yet you and your 21 followers. Okay, you can go night night. Night night.
21 whole
Night night.
followers. Man, he's crushing it.
Yeah,
Oh,
totally.
thank you again to people who continue to follow me. I truly appreciate it. Building these numbers is not an ego thing. It's really important to help us grow the channel, and it will help us also, as a slight reminder, to go to Fax's links, and please do subscribe to YouTube. There are stronger possibilities to have larger panels and different style content. From my perspective, this is not about TikTok going away. This is about really kind of growing what it is that we're doing here and being able to provide different content. So all of these things are helpful, and I am extremely appreciative of all of this. So thank you all in advance.
And the advantage of going to YouTube is so that Fax doesn't have to worry about tossing his phone across the room when TikTok is glitching out. So there's always that.
Yeah. And I actually, because I'm a nerd, I've got 3 monitors and a really nice camera and a really nice microphone, and
I have a pen.
Because sometimes I get interviewed for podcast stuff, so I have to have a nice setup. So I'm looking forward to that.
Go for it. I want to kind of just sort of remind folks or just inform folks that we're working on a couple of things. Anthony I think you brought it up last night. We're working on trying to panel some experts in related to pew violence with data. We're going to speak to it from the data side, and we want to weave that conversation into how we can make changes. What can we do, because we talk too often about the thoughts and prayers, and but we never get to the solution side. So we're we're working on an all-star panel to try to have that conversation. So that'll be coming. I also connected with someone today. You and I briefly went back and forth. I feel like I'm finding some support. Definitely have somebody who's going to join. We'll talk about that in the near future. We want to really have a conversation with MAGA/Republican women. As we want to do that this month in celebration of Women's History Month, to try to understand why, after everything that Donald Trump has done, specifically in the regards to women specifically, why there's still this support. We see it waning. We see the numbers sliding, but there's still a large chunk of our population of women who support him. So we're going to have a conversation about that maybe next week at some point. So we're working on putting those pieces together. And so what we're trying to do here is try to create these environments where we have a specific topic. I know we bounce around a lot, and Anthony's always very kind when I always say, this is my plan for now. Give me a half an hour and I'll change it. It does happen. Exactly. But we try to have a particular target in mind, and we want to do these exclusive sort of conversations about topics like I just mentioned, like we did immigration, we did education. We're going to do pew violence. We're going to do trying to dissect the mind of the Republican MAGA woman, things like that. So if anybody has any suggestions, and if you like our format and you like the way in which you do things, please message us. We'd be happy to engage or at least consider what that would look like. We also feel that we're trying to create a space here where there's good dialogue. We're not afraid to be called out on stuff. If there's some factual inaccuracies, we seek out the experts, which is why it was great that Rollo made himself available tonight, why Dave was able to bring himself up. We talked to some cyber experts. We talked to some people who are in the intel world who understand classification markings. That's kind of the point. I know my lane. Anthony knows his lane. We can navigate a lot through a lot of things, but I don't ever want to speak out of turn, especially topics that are this sensitive. And speaking of speaking out of turn, I didn't see you there. How's it going?
That just hurts. I mean, I come up here, I try to be a decent human being, and this is what you throw at me.
I'm sorry. I know.
No, hugs.
Hey, remember what I said? When the kidding stops, so does the love.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I'll give you that.
How are you, sir?
I'm okay. I spent the day out and about exploring, and we'll do so again over the next couple of days.
Nice.
So yeah, it's interesting up here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot more research to do.
Okay.
But yeah, I have uploaded a few fun things over with
Okay.
he who shall not be named,
Gotcha.
because I don't want to slip into the voice.
Okay. Okay. Your cousin from the circus.
Well, yeah, Anthony, I don't know if I told you, but I told Fax a couple of days ago. I was out about 2 weeks ago out with a lady having a lovely evening, and partway through the conversation, I slipped into the clown voice, and yeah, I caught myself, and
Probably too late.
you'll know we're not going out anymore. So, not beyond the realm of possibility. I know, shocker. Well, after a couple of weeks, she started nagging. She was saying, "I want to know your last name. Why do I have to wear a blindfold when we go to your house?" It's like, you're smothering me. I'm out.
That's just too much.
I know. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I recently started dating again, so any advice, that goes to anybody, please feel free to share. So, tell me I should run for Canada now, or leave the country, or just go incognito, or whatever that would look like. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble for that, guaranteed.
I'm reminded of many moons ago. There were a couple of moms at my old school talking about their kids getting old enough to date, and one of them looked at me and she said, "Well, you got kids. What kind of dating advice are you going to give your daughter?" Well, it's pretty easy. All men suck. The only man you can trust is dad. You sometimes can't trust dad just because dad's a jerk face. I said, "Well, what kind of dating advice are you going to give your son?" "Never pay more than $20 for a lap dance." They were. That's a double standard. I'm man enough for two. So,
but
I know. Okay, so guy's driving down a country road. He looks over at this farm and he sees some pigs, but one of the pigs, great big pig, has a wooden leg. He pulls over, gets out, he goes over to the fence, he's looking at this pig, and the farmer comes over and says, Can I help you? And he says, "Yeah, what's the story with this pig with a wooden leg?" Farmer says, "Oh, that's a very, very special pig. 6 months ago, middle of the night, my house caught on fire. My wife and I were asleep upstairs. The pig broke out of his pen, ran over to the house, knocked down the front door, avoided all the flames, came up the stairs, drug my wife and I out unconscious onto the lawn, saved our lives." And the guy goes, that is amazing. And he did all that with a wooden leg? And they said, no, he had 4 legs at the time. I said, "Oh, well, why does he have a wooden leg?" I said, "Well, a pig that special, you don't eat all at once."
Oh, man. But try the veal. Tip your bartenders and waitresses. Yeah, karaoke on Thursdays. Thank you, friend.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now the question is,
were we just talking about trying to elevate conversations and have like informed discussions, and then
yes,
we do need a break
now.
every now and then in the decor.
I'm gonna take a little turn here.
Okay. Uh-oh.
I was thinking that a fantastic addition to the Darkness and Facts
After Dark
would be having a certain performative guest that could do dramatic readings, A, and B, perhaps give advice. Ask a clown a question, get an answer.
I think we should probably contact the clown's agent and see if that might be something the clown might be up for.
I don't know, and Fax and I have talked about this. I don't know if that filter is available here in the live.
Oh, that's a good point.
I don't know. Now I could always
be.
come up and just use the avatar, and just leave the avatar up.
Yeah, it's always an option. It might be better anyway.
And we've talked about the clown coming into lives.
Sure.
And maybe that's not a good idea.
Well, we could save it for Facts After Dark. That would be the goal. I mean,
Yes.
I think that would be the case to Anthony's point. That's probably where we should debut. Like the clown could make his his grand entrance into the world of TikTok lives. Oh no, I can't believe I just said that out loud. Holy moly!
Oh yeah.
Well, look at the time.
Yeah, look, I gotta go.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we've had some good, interesting conversations this evening. Yeah, and I think as we were just saying, we're trying to create more, specific, targeted topics. So I want to remind everybody again, if there's things that are on your mind that you would like us to kind of dive into and dissect, we have a list. There's a lot of things that are. I've always been told that I have a head full of useless information. There are times that I can tap into it, and pull out stuff, but it becomes it's an avalanche of information that comes at us every single day these days. And I always see, there might be some nuance. Do we need to unpack this a little bit more? Like, for example, wanting to not engage, but engage with Republican MAGA women to find out, definitely not engage, to find out why they would still support the Republican Party in general, or in particular Donald Trump. So what is it? What is that draw? I shared an article earlier today with someone who I think I'll panel for this. I know I'm going to panel for this conversation. It's like unlocking the code. It goes back to the Tea Party and about how so these are the conversations that we definitely want to have going forward. So,
well, I know you and I have talked about it before. It's a sad reality, at least for me, and apparently some others who were back in the single market. One of the first fact-finding questions I throw out to any potential date is, are you a Trump supporter?
Yeah.
And when they say yes, the conversation is over.
Many.
Toodaloo.
Yeah. Toodaloo.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I'll never get him back. Don't do it. First one's free.
It's none of them are free. They cost. They have a psychic cost.
It's true.
That,
that's true.
We all.
Yeah, but
have
I mean, I think those are important conversations about. Again, it's because we need to coexist as a society after the end of the Trump movement, and we already know that Trumpism and MAGA has fractured families. Are they beyond repair? For many people we speak to. I've lost friends. I think we've all mentioned that we've lost friends during this process, and I think it's it's important conversations, and I want to have it. But in this month in particular, I really want to platform women to find out maybe there's a reason that we don't know. Maybe there's something we're missing. Maybe it's the obvious. Maybe it's about people that they've always been told what to do. Their husbands, their fathers, whomever it is, tells them who to vote for. I wish that weren't true, but I think it's probably very likely that it's true. Is it a draw to the powerful man or the perception of power, whatever that looks like? I just want to understand that a little bit more. I think it's an important conversation. I'm looking forward to it. Probably going to be religion. Somebody said it's religion. Sure, but there's Joe Biden's also religious, so I guess maybe I don't know. It's the air of Christianity or the air of evangelical approaches to politics, perhaps not the actual religion.
Well, even that comment, religion, it's a cult.
Yeah,
and a cult is
for sure
by its nature a religion.
For sure,
and
for sure,
you can't question the leader.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Warner just said single issue. We know that single issue. It's most likely abortion rights, access to women's health care, and again, that's the hypocrisy behind it, right? That women wanting to feel empowered, and they rightly so, and but yet at every turn, even people in the same family, on the same team, are voting against their own best interests. So we'll unpack that, hopefully. Yeah. But thank you for joining tonight, Rusty. It's always good to see you, man. Keep us updated on your journey.
Absolutely. I'm really enjoying it up here, and I'll let you know once I get home. I'll be popping in and out during the week anyway, but I'll let
Yeah.
you guys know once I get home. And definitely, Anthony, you and I are getting together soon. So,
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, rub it in again, fellas. Appreciate that. Rub it in. We appreciate that.
well, that's when we get together.
Okay.
You know,
Jesus. That's definitely facts after dark.
it's LA, man. You know, that's what we all are down there. It's you know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Talk to you later.
You got it.
Be well.
You guys
Bye,
take
bro.
care.
All right, bud. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Time for a couple more, I think.
Yeah.
We do. All right. Thank you, friends. Continue to like and share.
Good evening.
And hi. How are you?
Hey, friends. Just a quick thing on this subject that might work is, and only because I'm beginning to see it like covered on some media, is the idea of Christian nationalists really pushing for an after-election national divorce.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they're putting, that's a very fancy way for saying, a civil war, but so they're talking, and apparently it's very high level folks, some people that we may know the names of. So it's something I thought might be something, we could do some research and maybe come back to it.
I like that.
I don't like that I'm hearing it on the news, to be honest.
No, I
But
agree.
I think it might attract some MAGA from a different perspective. My husband leaves to go to Texas tomorrow for family. It's interesting. Half of it, or 3/4, will be MAGA, and the other quarter will be quiet. I'm not going to the wedding for a variety of reasons, but
Sure.
I'm hoping everyone is well behaved for a lovely time because the couple deserves it. So
That's great.
Yeah.
And I again,
I-
that should matter at the end of the day.
No, it would not. But and then finally, since I'm surrounded by, ironically, in New Jersey, by a few MAGA women, and for many of them, it's the idea of traditional womanhood, and they get reinforced at church on Sunday about their role of women and the role models from the Bible. So a lot of them, have either pro-life, they're single issue voter. And I know for a lot of Catholic friends, that's what it was. But for others, it really is our Rainbow Coalition, its allies, and then the reinforcement of traditional roles for women. And unironically, every
I
Sunday.
was just gonna say that unironically. I mean, I get that, but it's the bending the knee to the patriarchy generation after generation after generation, and yet do they expect their daughters and their nieces to be the same? And that's the part that I hear what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense, but at some point break the cycle.
So the way that I was raised was to get that education, use it, then get married. I wanted to be a lawyer at the time, and go to law school, put in that work. But when I get married and had children, stay at home, raise the children, and then you could always go back to work, which unfortunately that mommy tax is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be honest, it is difficult to work a job and be a full-time mom to toddlers.
Yeah.
And not everybody can have a nanny or grandmother or an au pair
Yep.
to, help them through that.
Yeah.
So women are exhausted. So I'm not excusing why the MAGA, I don't get it myself. I broke that cycle because I watched my mom lose her husband, my father, and then we went from upper middle class to poverty for the rest of my childhood. So I just think that we should be, I'd like to see if there is a correlation to their religion for why they're MAGA versus the patriarchy.
Right.
I just think it'll resonate more with them. I don't know, maybe not. But
No, I agree. I think that's really good. That's a really good point. That's exactly why we want to have that conversation, Fee. I appreciate that. That's exactly why, because it's always been a mystery to me. We know where we hear a lot of the hatred from men. We know where that comes from. That's not surprising anymore. Although the level of disgust still just yeah.
Yep.
Anywho, but the specifics around the like you said, the women in MAGA and even suburban women, although we're starting to see fractures there, even suburban women literally voting against their best interest. And I think you described it very, very well, right? Go out and get educated, whatever it might be, but then when the time comes to have the family, you stay home. So it's
Yep.
like that makes sense, right? But again, you're still voting even that vote that you think you're making because of that traditional value that you talked about, those traditions is just so dangerous to others who don't see it the same way, and you vote against your best interest.
Right, and that's also where you'll see a fracture with women as well in their
Yeah.
own relationships.
Yeah.
So I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's not enjoyable, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's what's just my 2 cents was the
Appreciate that.
idea
Thank you.
of the religion, and then again just the idea of this national divorce is
Yeah.
I'll have to do a little bit more research.
Well, we'll be promoting it
Because
when time comes, so there'll be time. So
Yep.
awesome. Thank
thank
you.
you, friend. Appreciate you.
Cheers, guys. Have a great night.
You too. Have a good night. Thanks a
Cheers.
lot. All right, bye.
Bye.
I already put an article in your inbox there, sir.
Thank you,
on the
buddy.
national divorce.
Appreciate that. Much appreciated.
I mean, I know that's shocking that I would actually.
I appreciate that. It's usually the other way around, but I appreciate that. Good evening, Laura. How are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is my first time I've ever gotten on a live, so I don't know what I'm doing
You're
at
doing great.
all.
You're doing great.
At all. But I was just listening. I listen to you quite a bit, and I love listening to your lives.
Thank you.
But your subject tonight really caught my ear because I can totally relate to so much of, what the last guest was saying and, what everyone is talking about. Like, I live, well, first, just to give you some background, I live in Georgia. I grew up with older parents. My father was much older. My mother was more liberal. And then my father leaned much more conservative. And I just had kind of like, grew up like more open minded to left leaning views from my mother. And then I was married to someone who was more on the Republican side. And ultimately, which our marriage like fell apart before like Trumpism and all that came about. But, I don't know how anyone can date anyone, who is right leaning being a woman. Like, I really struggle with that. And being in the South and just being surrounded by people with that mindset, like, I really have a hard time just like dating or just like putting myself out there. Like, I mean, I just can't even like go there because I'm just like in such a red bubble.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, obviously, I appreciate that. You sort of felt comfortable because the topic was, something that you've been thinking about. I think that's kind of the goal, and which is why we want to have conversations about that. I think it's interesting that, it's to Rusty's point earlier. It's like that's the first disclaimer, or like that's the first question that people are asking now about your political affiliation, right? And I wonder how far back we have to go before that was not the first question, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, it used to not be that way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I always had friends on the other side, and I feel like I can't even really be friends with those people now. Because I feel like the morality issue is just so I I think if you are supporting Donald Trump and you believe in the that ideology, I don't even know if I want to be friends with you, let alone date you. I
Yeah.
mean, it's very hard for me to, you know, continue a friendship with someone after I know. And I've lost so many friends. I mean, and a lot of it has just been me just disassociating myself. But I just look back over the past, say 8 years since, Trump came on the scene. And I have, been like very outspoken against Trump and Trumpism. And I've just watched like so many like people that I've been so close to just get sucked in to that ideology. And it's so sad to me because I really loved these people at one point in time. And it was not easy for me to, you know, just throw away those friendships. But I mean, I really felt like I had no choice because I feel so strongly about it.
We hear it a lot, and again, Laura, thank you for your being vulnerable about this. We hear it a lot. We've seen it from the fracturing of families. We've seen friendships lost, and now we have this new phenomenon, right? And I think if there's a silver lining to any of it, I think it really allows people to focus truly on what matters to them from a character perspective, right? You can look past a lot of other things, like he doesn't they keep the house too cold, or they use the wrong frying pan, or they don't like horror movies, right? But now we're talking about your character,
Yeah.
your morals, how you treat others, the rights of others being protected, willing to stand up for people's rights. That's the stuff that should matter, and we just see it more and more. The deeper we the level of whatever you want to call it, cult behavior, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that this that sparked something in you to want to talk about it, because we got to have this conversation. It's important. It's important. Anthony, did you have
I
anything to add, friend?
No, I mean, thank you for coming up and sharing your personal experience. I think that's super important. And, come back.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much, Laura. Appreciate talking to you. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
I got you. Do you want me to? I can drop you down if you're interested.
Yeah,
You,
drop
you,
me. I'm not sure how to drop.
you got it. No problem. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I don't know why they had to move the icon. It was fine where it was.
I know it's easy. Um, I think that's probably a good way to end it.
Yeah.
Again, I had no idea the extremely positive reaction we got from that conversation, so
Yep.
that's coming. I'll remind. Yes, Laura, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. We'll remind people. We'll promote that event because we want to have this conversation, and I think it's important. Quite frankly, I think it's going to be important for MAGA men to hear it. I think it's really, really important, and I also think it's going to be important for everybody. This is not. I want to back up a second. I want to be careful. I don't want this to be a politically affiliated, a political affiliation conversation. I want to understand specifically why women vote MAGA. And I'm sure it's going to turn into a conversation like we just had with Laura about how there's a lot of the loneliness epidemic. We know that
Yep.
there's gaps in, personal relationships. We know that isolation due to COVID, and it's sort of continued in a variety of ways. And, we will be doing the Are You Okay Live again. I want to make sure we do that at least once a month. And I think that that might lead into bigger and better. So your
Yeah.
highlights this evening, sir. What's how do you want to land the plane tonight?
I just want to mention one thing.
Sure.
I think it's important for the audience to understand that from time to time there will be instances in which I will not be up here. And those will be specifically because one of the things that we don't want this to become is an echo chamber, right? And so when we do speak to women in MAGA and find out, I will be sitting down in the comments and there will be a panel of people brought up to handle this situation because my voice is not needed here, right? And this is how you can separate those who are true to what it is that they're trying to do to those who are here for clicks, likes, and frankly, grifting.
Thank you.
That is not us.
Appreciate that.
Right. And I think it's super important that people understand that there's a lot of integrity and that Fax and I do a lot of communicating and a lot of thought putting these. And yeah, I was spicy tonight, but you know what? Every once in a while, you're going to get some spicy Italian meatballs, whether you want them or not. So enjoy.
How you doing?
Hey. Who wants it eats it.
That's right. Wow, I just had a flashback. I appreciate you saying that, and yeah, and I agree. And I think what we've tried to show folks is that we want representation is really, really important. So I connected with Anthony today, and I said, listen, this is what I'm thinking. And before I could get the words out of my mouth, he's like, yeah, absolutely, you don't need me for that. So I think that's kind of the conversation that we want to have, and there'll be more like this, and we'll introduce other people, and we'll have more conversations, and having a panel of experts is always the goal. So I want to thank you, my brother, for being so cool about that. Thank mods as always. We have the best mods in the business. They're amazing, and they take what they do very, very seriously. And we could not do what we do without you all. Thank you for those people that have gifted us this evening. Thank you for any additional subscribers. I saw a few come. I can't get them all because my ADHD gets me all over the map. So I couldn't snack everything, but I did my best. I'll put this plug out there one more time. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, I agree. There's not much there right now, but we're trying to build more content. And to do that, we need more subscribers. 1,000 is the number on YouTube to be able to go live. There's some other features that it unlocks too, but I don't know what they are because we haven't unlocked it yet. But more to come on that. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Yep. And we'll see you all tomorrow night, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, friends. Have a good night.
Peace.